It's November 3rd, 2023. I am at Joel Pearl, and it's time to get in the weeds. Jeremy and I are especially excited because someone else today gets to enjoy the opening sequence and opening title card to our show, as crazy as it is. Jeremy Lambert's here. How are you doing real quick before we bring on our guest?
I always feel bad when we make anybody sit through that. I feel really, really bad about it. Where's our new one, Tim?
Yes.
Do something for this show.
Right now, my conversations with Tim include trying to get a new intro and trying to convince him not to go away for the holidays because Greektown is running. It's supposedly at Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto, but they're bringing in Jerryland. And of course, Santana's coming back. So I'm trying to get him so I can get some interview work done. But otherwise, I'll just go on my own. Regardless, not important. Tim will get us a new intro soon, I promise. But I also promised a good guest, and I'm giving you a great guest right off the top. Tonight, it airs on Impact Plus and the Ultimate Insiders on YouTube or on Fight TV, wherever you're going to watch it. This man takes on his newest mortal enemy, Joe Hendry. Today we have the one and only, very excited to welcome him on. Simon Miller joins us now. How you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, guys. It is a pleasure to be here. I enjoyed that weird opening. I like looking at Vince McMahon's moustache. And yeah, I'm having a good day. I'm having a good week. Pretty damn crazy. But no, thank you so much for having me on.
Cheers. It's good to have you. It's good to
thanks for joining us.
Bring you on. Yeah. So let's just get right into this match. So it's going to air tonight on Impact's various areas of airing. You're taking on Joe Hendry, and this all started with food fight. Well, it started a little bit before that with your ups and downs, and then it became a food fight. So give us a little bit of the background of the story with Joe Hendry.
Absolutely. So obviously, Impact celebrated, a milestone when they had a recent show. It was Impact 1000, I believe it was. So, we at What Culture decided, well, we don't give enough love to Impact Wrestling. We would love to, but anyone that frequents, you guys will know, frequents internet wrestling community, there's a lot of content, and trying to squeeze out more content sometimes can be hard. And all I did, hands up, look, nice innocent Simon Miller over here. All I did was not particularly, enjoy what Joe Hendry had done on that evening. That's not to say that Joe Hendry isn't a wonderful pro wrestler. That's not to say that Joe Hendry hasn't made strides in the wrestling business over the last few years. But as I talked about, he took it the wrong way and he decided to try and beat me up. I wasn't at What Culture HQ, which he knows, by the way. He knows I don't work there. He knows I'm a freelancer roaming around. And then, yes, we agreed to sit down for his food fight show. We threw chicken at each other, as any good combatants would do. And now we have to sell it in the ring later, like every good wrestling feud. It ends with chicken, and then you get in the ring and you see who the better man is.
Why do you think Joe Hendry is such a dick? Honestly, he tries to portray himself as a good guy, but he's kind of a little of a jerk.
I don't know. Maybe it's because people don't believe in him. Maybe that's what it is. If you don't believe in Joe Hendry, he's like, but I've told you this 1,000 times. And again, look, generally, with my serious hat on, especially from looking at it from a UK perspective, he has made tremendous strides over the last couple of years. Like, he really, really, really has. And he's a very, very smart human being too, in terms of how he markets himself. I just think he needs to understand that sometimes people are going to say things you don't like about you, and that's okay. And it shouldn't. If every single time someone said something bad about you, it ends with you having fisticuffs, look, that is kind of how society works. But I think there has to be some kind of a line. But look, he put out the challenge, and I'm happy to answer that challenge and prove to him that YouTubers can still kick ass. That's the major thing we're taking away here, is that you can make wrestling videos and you can get in a ring and still prove that you deserve to be there.
Okay, but can we talk about gut check these nuts, though?
I mean, I thought it was a good line, right? That's a great line. That's a great line. Joe said, do you want to be on gut check? And I said, gut check these nuts. That's funny. That is funny stuff as far as I'm concerned. He didn't like it. He still doesn't like it. He thinks I make a joke out of wrestling. And do you know what? He is correct. But it's meant to be like an all-encompassing joke. It's meant to be like, wrestling's funny. We all get in our pants and roll around. Maybe we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously. And he thinks that's me being disrespectful. Maybe he's right. I disagree. But that's what he thinks anyway.
Have you thought about making less jokes, Simon? Are you able to do that?
No, I'm not able to do that because I don't take
Fair.
myself seriously. That's the issue. I'd have to actually hold myself with some kind of esteem to stop making jokes. The thing is, they're all very nice jokes. They're all very silly jokes. Like, I never say anything that anybody I don't think, well, I'm incorrect, but I always try and approach it. And I never actually say anything about, the human being. You know what I mean? It's all about what we're seeing on camera. Like that I think is sorely lacking in the I don't know, what do we call it? Wrestling personality space, content creator space. I don't know what the right term is. They're all horrible. They're all horrible terms. But I think there is, again, not one to veer too off into a different discussion, but that's kind of the way I've always approached it, because I did look at I ran the gambit and everyone was so horrible. I feel like there's enough horribleness in the world without also doing it for something as awesome as pro wrestling. So, I always, let's take the mick out of the characters. Let's not take the mick out of the people behind the masks.
What was the reaction when this match actually got announced? Like, what kind of messages did you receive when they put that graphic up? Joe Hendry, Simon Miller.
So, social media has its pros and its cons. Let's just say it has its ups and its downs. I'm a terrible person. I've gone there, but that's just the life. I have never received a reaction like that on social media ever. And it was there was two very different trains of thought. One was, the hell is going on? why you want an Impact pay-per-view? Fair point. But the other one, and the one that really, gave me a huge boost. So many people were really, really happy about this. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was absolutely incredible. Again, we just talked about it, but there is this idea that there is a lot of negativity and sadness and screw you and we hope you fail. But I was getting people both, atting me in the replies and sending me, DMs saying it's so cool to see that you've done this. I followed everything you've done over the last few years. And, it was almost like we're living vicariously through you. And the fact that you've done it kind of makes us feel like we've all done it. And that's awesome, because I don't know whether I've ever sort of marketed myself that way, but I'll absolutely take it. If we can sort of come up with this little clan that walks around just like, yeah, success, and we're all patting each other on the back, then yeah, I think that's great. And it really was. I remember, as sad as it sounds, I did kind of go to bed that night. I just felt a little bit happier, with the world, because genuinely, I mean, again, people were really, really pleased that it happened. And they also said, I'm going to go out of my way to check this match out, which comes with it a certain amount of pressure. But I quite like that. I think that's, being in a comfortable situation, I think is important for growth and all those stupid human terms that we say. But yeah, if anybody is watching this and you did send me one of those messages, please do know that you truly put a spring in my step that day. And I think I'll have to double check. But in terms of, social media engagement, I think it destroyed any kind of record that I ever had. Like, I knew it was quite good, because even my dad, who thinks professional wrestling is the worst thing that has ever existed on the planet, and why he looks at the analytics of my tweets or my X posts, whatever the hell we're calling it, even he was like, well, this is done very well. And then he wanted to know more about it. So I was like, if I've won my dad over, let's chalk this up to a huge success. So yeah, we'll give it a tick.
I've got to put it over, because the way that this match came together was different from how most matches on a televised wrestling program come together. It was done mostly online. Jeremy and I sat on this show and discussed it, because at the time people were kind of like, what's going on with Simon and Joe Hendry? And I said, and I explained, I was like, I think this is becoming a thing, and I'm excited because it's turning out to be a really well put together thing, as it were. So I'm looking forward to the match tonight, but here's the real question going into it. What is your Nando's order?
What is mine? Well, you see, I'm a little bit of a wuss. Actually, you know what? I am privileged though. I've been having Nando's for like 20 years, because somehow my nan, she's passed away now, but she figured out Nando's like before Nando's was a thing. Like, one day we just went to see my nan, because we're all going out for Portuguese chicken, and we were like, what? Why? What? And it was Nando's. So I've been having Nando's for a good, couple of decades. But no, I am a bit of a wuss. I have lemon and herb, half chicken, because again, you got to get your protein in. And then I have spicy rice. Even that's a little bit too much for me, but you got to get your rice. And ever since they introduced that broccoli, I mean, that's just like the most boring gym food ever, isn't it? Oh, chicken, rice, and broccoli. That's just what I've explained. But I do enjoy it. Although, if we are going off piste, not enough people talk about this. Nando's make a good mashed potato. Now, it's rare to say that about a restaurant that is mostly chicken focused. But yeah, if you haven't tried the mashed potato, check it out. It's good stuff. Which is another reason why me throwing the lemon and herb chicken at Joe was sad. I could have eaten that, and instead it ended up on his jacket, and he wasn't very happy about it. That chicken was not edible once all that was done. I tried. It was a bad idea.
Was there any hesitation to kind of do all of this because of the potential backlash and reaction? You know, our boss, our friend Sean Ross Sapp, he did an impaler DDT to the reaction of nothing, and it got a lot of backlash from that of like, what is this journalist doing trying to do wrestling stuff? Like, did that thought ever cross your mind?
So, I mean, look, I know that was most unfair what happened to Sean, because he did, he's trained to be a wrestler and all of that, and people just decided to forget that was a thing. But I think I just got lucky. I think most people within the space we were kind of advertising the match knew that I wrestled a lot in the UK. So I think they just saw it as, oh, he's making a natural next step. I suppose the difficult thing was to pull back the curtain a little bit. But again, we all know what's going on here. When somehow we had successfully convinced people that it was legit, that's when it did get a little bit awkward, because I had promoters messaging me, I had other wrestlers messaging me, I had wrestling fans mentioning me, going like, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Other people being like, because it was deliberately meant to be done. Sometimes he was a bit of a dick, sometimes I was a bit of a dick. Like, that's how I think you get people to believe in it, because even if you're the nicest person ever, if I come up and punch you in the face, you're going to punch me back. You're not going to be like, "No, I do not resort to violence." So there was this sort of moment where I was a bit like, oh man, people think this is real, which I was not expecting. How do I kind of sort of circumvent this without, it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a very delicate space, because obviously you want to keep the dream alive. But, as soon as we threw chicken at each other, this was always part of the plan. When we threw chicken at each other, everybody's going to know what's going on. It's so absurd. And I was a bit like, it could upset some people. And it did. I got some of the tweets being like, "Oh, I can't believe you tried to pull the wool over my eyes." But I would say that's probably I think that's probably a shame about somewhere where the wrestling industry as a whole has headed in. No one actually likes being worked anymore, even though that's the whole point of wrestling, is to be worked, going, "Oh, you scallywags, you kind of got me there." But no, yeah, it was certainly a couple of weeks where it was a bit rickety, especially when it was my turn to play, the bigger asshole, because mostly that's not what I do. But again, to make this work, we knew that we had to do it. But it actually was quite fun. And now I've gone through it once, I think I'd handle it better the second time. But I certainly got a lot of messages of people going, "Oh, you coward YouTuber, you're running away from Joe Hendry." And you just have to know, set like, yeah, big deal. What are you going to do about it? So I think that made it more fun, though. And again, let's not pretend otherwise. This is the biggest platform I've ever been offered as a wrestler. So I just told everybody involved, whatever you want me to do, I'm just going to do it. Do you know what I mean? You've given me this opportunity, and we've all heard this analogy 1,000 times. If I turn up on Steven Spielberg's set, I don't go, "Steve, I'm going to do it my way." Screw you. I'm going to do what I'm told, and I'm going to make the best of it. And that's what they asked me to do. And I was like, yeah, let's go have some fun. And it really was fun. I can't lie. It's some of the best stuff I've done on that side of of sort of the wrestling bubble.
No, you've got to hit to more with that doesn't work for me, brother. Like, whatever he asks you to do, like, nah, that doesn't work for me, brother. Not doing that tonight.
I should have done it. I'm a YouTuber, man. You can't say that to me.
We're TN ain't doing that.
Yeah, there you go. There is.
Awful. That was awful. Princess Diana sent us a super chat. Rest her soul. Simon is truly the best of us. Yeah, my favorite wrestling personality. Sorry. And bald man. And don't tell William. But coming into that, have you thought about becoming more of an asshole personality? Because you just kind of touched on it.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that. Like, we're here to have fun and have a chat, but we're here to sell a pay-per-view too. All I'm going to say is this, because I don't want to give the game away too much. If you, for many years, have wanted to see a different side to Simon Miller, you want to buy Turning Point this evening or tomorrow or whatever, because it's on streaming. That was one of the things that was so appealing about this to me as well, is that after the chat, Impact wanted to present me in a very different way. And it was very exciting because, again, I'm probably pulling the curtain back a little bit too much, but let's not be ridiculous. It is a creative endeavor, and it's fun to challenge yourself in different ways. So there is a twist on this show. People should be able to figure this out. I'm doing a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudge here. But there is a twist on this show, and it worked out so well. I almost broke it by smiling too much because I just couldn't believe it. But again, it will go out to the wider audience this evening. And if it does get received as well as it did in the building, then I'm going to be the happiest man ever. But yeah, no, it absolutely was. But I enjoyed it because it felt completely different. And I like that, right? That's what we can all do the same thing over and over, and that's awesome. But sometimes it's good to have some fun as well, which is why I'm also really excited for people to see this, because some people won't see it coming. And hopefully that gets a good reaction. I hope. I cross my fingers.
Joel pulled it up. I'm gonna pull it up again. But Peter Bradders said, "As someone there for Turning Point, it was amazing, and I love the match." And
That's very cool.
Why Solable also said he would let you punch him in the face if that's something you would want to do.
Done. Awesome. Let's do it.
We'll set that up.
I have a couple of more questions that are non-Impact related. I gotta ask: have you considered getting into toe wrestling?
Is this based on something I did recently? Is this what you've looked up? Yeah. How weird was that? Right, let's fill people in. So seriously, here I am, sat at this very desk here with my computer, and all of a sudden it goes ping, and I get an email, and it's from Radio 2. Now, people that don't know, BBC Radio 2 is probably the biggest radio station in the UK. Radio 1 is the more super cool, hip, 18 to 34 radio station. But Radio 2 is sort of incorporates that demographic and an older one too. So it has mad listenerships. And the guy that does the afternoon show is called Jeremy Vine. He's somewhat of a controversial figure because, well, he's very loud on social media. So therefore he winds people up. And it was from their producer saying, "Oh, Simon, somebody's recommended us to you, you're a wrestler. You're also an MC. Can you come in and do some commentary as Jeremy Vine takes on the world toe wrestling champion?" Now I read this email and I'm like, well, it's a prank email. It's a prank email. What the flip? But, I messaged back because I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. And they gave me a call. So, yeah, about 2 months ago, I went into London. I went to the BBC Radio 2 studios, which is a very professional outlet, I shall have you know. And I brought a singlet for Jeremy Vine to wear, which was also strange. And I sat there and I watched the world toe wrestling champion take him on. I had to learn all the rules. And it was the most bizarre thing I've done in 2023. But it's also one of those cool things that only professional wrestling could throw at you. I don't think I'll get into it. I don't know if anyone... Go on YouTube toe wrestling right now. It's like Thumb Wars, whatever it's called these days, but obviously with your feet. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't really want to touch anybody else's feet. That's the truth of it. It's a little bit... But this guy was really good. My gosh, he absolutely smashed it. But no. So yes, I have thought about it, and my answer is a resounding no. I don't want to do it. So strange, but also pretty cool. Again, pure pro wrestling.
Jeremy, I don't know if you got another one.
Oh, I didn't know if you had one. You said you had a couple non-wrestling. I didn't know if there was another one besides toe wrestling, which I was not expecting at all. I was just gonna ask, getting back into the Impact and wrestling. They were back in the UK for the first time in like forever. Just the overall vibe of the show and Impact when rebranding back to TNA. What was the overall vibe back there?
It was crazy. Like, again, I wasn't at the Glasgow or Coventry shows, but I saw the clips and I heard from the guys. Mad crowds. Do you know what I mean? So loud. And the Newcastle show where Turning Point is live from. I kind of went and stood behind the curtain when the show started just to get that classic thing, get a feel. What do people sound like? And I don't know what the attendance was. It was probably sold out, and that place holds about 2,500 people or something like that. But it was so loud, and they were so up for it, and they were just, they kept that energy up for the whole show, which is a good 3 hours long. And apparently, it was the same for the whole tour. And we've kind of seen it back in the day, I suppose, because TNA/Impact is on free TV over here. It's just opened it up for a bigger fan base, especially sort of back in the 2010, whenever it was, that era. If you didn't want to pay for WWE, you could just watch TNA. And I think that's kind of meant over here. A lot of people grow up with it. So it's their wrestling company of choice. Like a lot of the younger wrestlers that are on the scene over here, they're not WWE guys, they're TNA guys. Because again, they don't have any money when they're children. So they're not going to go for Sky or BT or TNT as it is now over here. They watched it on free television. And therefore, I think that's kind of, translated across to the fan base too. So even though they haven't been over in 8 years or whatever it was, they still want to go back. And the fact that they announced it was TNA again, like a week before, again, just constant TNA chants. So it was really cool to see because I think that's been the best thing about wrestling this year, is that there is so much wrestling on TV, but you can pick and choose what you want. And of course, WWE has a bigger fan base and Impact doesn't have as big a fan base, but there's still people that are so damn passionate about it and they're so dialed in. And really, that's all you can ask for, right? Is an audience that is happy to support you and, back your product. So yeah, it was awesome to see. I think no one has said anything to me, but the vibe was they're going to come back a lot sooner, I presume in 2024. And again, I think the more they come over and the more they can reestablish themselves here, they just, do bigger venues. And again, they have such a cool footing over here. And I thought it was also not just me, but it was so badass how they reached out to a bunch of UK wrestlers to get that sort of feel on the show. And obviously they signed Leon off the back of it too. Leon Slater, who's just nonsense wrestler. I mean, I don't know how he does half the things that he does do. So I do think they have, like I say, a really cool connection over here. And I hope they can keep it going because, WWE was over here on Sunday too. And obviously AEW had the All-In show. So we're just winning. we're just winning right now. And I'm never going to get mad at that because there was a long while after WCW died where we would just get those ridiculous UK pay-per-views by WWE. And they were just glorified house shows. They were fun going to. But after every one, you drove home going, I kind of think they pulled the wool over our eyes. I don't actually think that meant anything. So to get to this space now, I just think it's super cool. And it almost increases your fandom even more because you actually have something to get more invested in.
I was going to ask, I like the idea of them coming back because you've got Will Ospreay wanting to come back in a TNA ring. You've got Zack Sabre Jr. recently saying he wants to compete in Impact. To which I say you have until December, Zach, because then it's TNA. But regardless, there's plenty of UK talent that's available and ready to work in TNA. And I hadn't realized, like you said, it's on free TV in the UK, so the availability is right there. It's sound, so that's pretty wild. My last question for you: what's your favorite Metallica song and your favorite Metallica album? I know you were a Met Club fan.
I mean, obsessive. My girlfriend thinks I'm weird. There's a room in my house that's dedicated to Metallica memorabilia, which I'm genuinely embarrassed about, but also don't care. So it changes every day. I mean, you have to say that because it's true, but I'm going to give you the boring answers. Actually, no, I'll give you a different answer. My favorite Metallica song right now is Creeping Death, mostly because it came on in the gym yesterday. And this is why I love Metallica so much. And I'm sure people can relate to it. It was like I'd never heard it before. Who knows why, right? It just got me. And I was like, this is the greatest riff I've ever heard in my life. So I'm going to throw Creeping Death in there. But Master of Puppets is my favorite album. Just because, again, there's a bias to it in the sense it was the first album I ever heard by Metallica. And as stupid as it sounds, when I did first hear Metallica, it totally changed what I thought music was. Like I was super young and all my friends were listening to pop music and R&B, which I liked to a certain extent, but didn't really do much for me. Then I heard Master of Puppets and it was like, oh my gosh, is this how they feel about that genre of music? And it never gets old. But I'm such a Metallica fan. I've even gone through Lulu a couple of times, the Lou Reed album, and been like, well, it's not that bad. And look, it is that bad. It's that bad. It's bad. That should be like all copies should be buried in the center of the earth and nobody should be allowed to listen to it. But sometimes I would go on these flights of fancies and go, well, actually, from 1 minute 27 to 2 minutes 12, that riff is pretty good. Maybe we can draw something out of that. But no, yeah, right now I go for Creeping Death and I'll go for Master of Puppets. But I will also give a shout out to No Leaf Clover because nobody ever talks about that song. Especially because it was just a random song they did on S&M one day. They just played it live with it. That's a new song. It was like, what? And that was it. Never talked about it again until they reintroduced it into their live set years later. So,
but so, the live version that they do without a symphony orchestra just doesn't have the same appeal. Like it's so much better and broader with a full symphony orchestra.
That 1999 version, dare I say it, cue the internet melting down, is actually perfect. Like it is perfect. And really, if they'd never played it again, that probably would have added to its sort of specialness as well. But I do love that song. Yeah, it's amazing.
I grew up with Metallica and Anthrax, Pantera.
And,
a lot of the metal bands from that era. So I needed to ask because Metallica was big in my day, and Megadeth, of course. Because
always. Crazy Dave Mustaine.
You know what? You and I might just have a whole other conversation, a whole separate time about metal and all that stuff. But I've ran out of stuff to talk about for now. We're gonna let you go about your day. I know you got a busy night tonight, so why don't you plug your stuff and get on out of here?
Hell yeah. I mean, if you just go to What Culture Wrestling on YouTube, search for myself, Simon Miller, you get 2 different channels. And very sadly, if I had known where my career was going, I never would have called myself this when I signed up to social media. Simon Miller 316 on all, on all platforms. Again, when I signed up for that, I was like working in a completely different industry. And I couldn't have Simon Miller, obviously. So I thought, well, I like Stone Cold Steve Austin. And now it's just become a thing. And yeah, if you are in the UK and you're living in Birmingham, I'll see you this evening. So I'm about to jump in a car and go wrestle, which I'm very, very excited about, for Kamikaze Wrestling. So I'll give them a shout out too. But yeah, if you just search for Simon Miller, usually my stupid bald head pops up, and any kind of support would rock. And guys, I also want to say thank you very much for having me on. I just love it. Anytime anybody asks me, I feel super privileged. So thank you very much.
It was a pleasure having you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, appreciate you joining us, Simon. Wysel will ask give the chat an up, please.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone, the chat gets an up, you guys get an up, and the whole shebang gets a golden up. Don't forget, none of that means anything. But if it means something to you, I massively appreciate it. So golden ups all round.
There you go. Everybody's popping for the golden up. Thank you, Simon. We appreciate it. Everyone, check out Turning Point tonight. Watch Simon kick the shit out of Joe Hendry.
We'll be covering it tonight. We'll be covering it tonight, youtube.com/Fightful, myself and Cresta Star. We will have a post show after Turning Point talking about this, putting over Simon, and I'm sure burying the absolute heel Joe Hendry. That's what we're going to do. Simon, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're looking forward to doing it again.
Thanks,
my pleasure, guys. I'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Take care. The one and only Simon Miller. My God.
Fantastic.
What a way to start your morning, huh?
Good job, Joel Pearl. Good job.
My God. I will take that pat on the back happily. Chat, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you had fun. And leave a thumbs up, by the way, while you're here. We didn't get to do that right away because we wanted to get right to Simon this morning. And of course, you can go ahead and subscribe to us here at youtube.com/FightfulOverbooked. We drop that content every single day. We separate the interviews out as well. We put those on our feed so that y'all can just ignore the rest of the show and get to the real stuff that matters. That's the conversations that Jeremy and I get into. I got to put you in the me position today, as Y Syllable said. Jeremy in the troll role with the basketball hip hop conversations.
Yeah, I was. The wife was messaging me saying that she had her 8th grade music project on Metallica, and I messaged her back and I said, I've never heard of Metallica, so I don't know what the...
Stop it. Stop it. She messaged me too to let me know, by the way, which is hilarious.
Yeah,
yes, Metallica questions.
never heard of them. You heard of Creed, Joel? They're going back on tour. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah. Looking forward to that. That's going to be something.
It's much better than Metallica.
It's true. It's much better than a lot of things that have come out in the last 24, 48 hours.
Y Syllable says that was fun. Let's get
toxic. Oh, by the way, donate a super chat and email, get your question or statement read on the air. Like earlier when Princess Diana rose from the grave and decided.
Yeah, you did a good job riffing off that. That was good.
Dude, that account has popped up more than once to donate super chats.
I think they have. Yeah.
God bless whoever it is, whoever you are. God bless. Oh my goodness. Where do we want to start? I see Ace saying gonna take a victory lap on AEW. No, I'm not, because there were certain things about Dynamite that, again, just like we talked about last week, I did enjoy. There are certain things about Dynamite and AEW as a whole that I and many others are struggling with, and I don't know where to start, because I don't want this to feel like another burying one company for the sake of burying it. Because again, in the act of talking about, we'll talk about Ric Flair very shortly. On the other hand, WWE is about to go to Saudi Arabia, and we're going to have this whole conversation again about what's going on there and the reality of, WWE putting over a regime that is absolutely awful in every regard. But we look past it because reasons. The same thing last weekend with the Francis Ngannou and Tyson Fury fight. Same thing. We unfortunately look past what's going on in Saudi Arabia because they dump truck money to get you not to think about it. So in this, when I talk about what's going on in AEW, I do very much keep in mind that in the whataboutism sphere, nobody's perfect and everyone's at fault and everyone kind of sucks. So that's where I'm at. So where do you want to start?
Let's talk about old Rick.
Yeah, there's plenty of angles to this story.
There's a lot to this story. So Chi-Town Spurs, and you know what? Chi-Town Spurs is gonna kick us off here. You guys have been right all week, and I was wrong. It's not a right or wrong.
Exactly.
Like AEW ain't what it used to be. Way too much lowbrow comedy makes all the stakes feel insignificant, especially in the main event feud. I know Joel has stuff to say about that with all the comedy. But so we'll get into that. But Chi-Town Spurs, I don't think it's right or wrong. People enjoy what they enjoy, and I want to make that very clear. I know there's people in the chat who like some of the stuff AEW is doing. I like some of the stuff that AEW is doing. I hope people know we are not harsh. I don't even know if we are harsh. I hope people know that we're not the fake outrage stuff. I think our audience, some of it, most of it, knows that we're not being fake outrage over this. We have what we like in wrestling. We're going to talk about what we like in wrestling, and we're going to constructively, hopefully, criticize and try to help what we don't like in certain aspects. I think a lot of us hold AEW to a higher standard, and this is fans and the talking heads like us hold AEW to a higher standard because they were presented as the alternative, right? WWE was bad for a lot of years. Everybody spent so many years burying WWE of like, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, they should do this, they should do this. And AEW came along and it was good. And then now it's not quite as good. And so we hold them to the higher standard because they haven't given us as much bad over multiple decades. That's just what it is. And now they're in the position that they're in. Ric Flair. We saw him the other week. He was the big gift for Sting. We said on the show, yep, not for us. Like, cool, Sting seems to like it. Good on Sting. He has an attachment to Rick that we just don't have. He has an affinity for Rick that we don't have because we are not Sting and we were not made to be Sting by Ric Flair. Like, Sting has admittedly said he owes a lot of his career to Flair and what Flair did for him in those early matches. And that's his own personal relationship he has with Rick. You see it on screen, you hear it on interviews. So that's their relationship. We both said, hey, we don't want him weekly. I don't need to see Rick every week because I don't think he helps the television product every week. And that's what it comes down to, at least for me in this instance. I don't think it helps the television product every week. He wasn't there this past week. Sting was. Like, that was cool. Then yesterday they announced the signing, multi-year deal. It came out, it was 2 years. It's part of the energy drink as well. So everybody's going to be sipping on the Woo energy. And Flair is going to at least be in AEW for 2 years. What's that going to be? Don't know. Don't know what that is going to be. If he's going to be on screen every week, he's making it sound like he's going to be on screen as much as possible. Whether or not that is actually the case, we will find out in the coming weeks and months. And he's going to be part of the company. The Woo energy is going to be part of the company. That's what it is when it comes to Ric Flair. People are going to call out Tony Khan for the hypocrisy of calling out Vince over the allegations and then signing Ric Flair to a 2-year deal. And that's completely correct. Tony Khan cannot go on these Twitter tirades and be like, well, Vince, I'm ratings are the least of his worries, or that, shooting shots are the least of, like, you can't do that and then sign Ric Flair 2 weeks later, because I think even Tony knows that this isn't, he knows Rick's past. And I know he knows Rick's past because they were going to bring in Rick at All Out a couple years ago, and then Dark Side aired, and then they didn't bring in Rick because the heat was hot on Ric Flair. And so it was like, we're not going to bring this guy in right now because the heat was on him. That's why WWE they removed him from the intro, and it was, the heat was on Ric Flair after Dark Side came out. It's been a couple years now. I think it's been 2 years. I think it was 2021. All this stuff happened. I don't think it was last year. So it's been 2 years since all this happened. Rick has gone on to go out there. He's got his marijuana company with Mike Tyson. He's got his Woo Energy company and all this stuff. He's done a lot of appearances, Comic-Cons, whatever. And so now Tony feels like, oh, okay, the heat's down. We can do this and tie it to Sting, and then everything is fine. And so he brought him in. I don't think it's a good look. I think it is hypocritical because of the Vince stuff. And from a television standpoint, I got no time for it. And I'll talk more about it, but I feel like I've talked enough. Go ahead, Joel.
First of all, Ryan Sullivan sent us a super chat saying more like boo energy. Yeah, it got a lot of people feeling a certain kind of way. And the first thing that when I was reading the press release, and Steve Argentaro, who we talked about a lot on this program because he helps us bring in talent from Smash Wrestling and also from Greektown to talk about their upcoming shows. But Steve, who's been around and part of the wrestling business for many, many years, had the same feeling that it was the energy drink more than it was about Rick's working in AEW, Rick personally appearing. That is clearly going to be a part of it. Rick's out there giving the interviews and putting himself in storylines and wanting to do promo ops with MJF and doing all this stuff. Because if there's one thing Ric Flair is going to do is try to make himself relevant to whatever is going on right now.
He said he'll take bumps. You know, he doesn't think that he'll wrestle a match, but he's open to it. He won't say no. He wants to take bumps. He even said he wants to take table bumps. So yeah, he's in the Ric Flair business first and foremost.
Jeremy, you know where he can go and take perfectly safe table bumps right now? The NWA. National Wrestling Alliance. That's right.
Real bumps, baby.
Yes, back when bumps were men. In this case, pure powder white. But I guess certain generations would probably. Anyway, the point being, this is what Rick wants to do. He's going to talk himself up he's going to put himself over while talking about the current crop and try and make it about him. And that's just what it is. I'm going to give a little bit of, I don't know. Here's what I want people to kind of think about. And that is every time Ric Flair has done something in the last 10 years, how long that thing has lasted. I'm talking brand deals, sponsorships, podcasts. He had another energy drink that he was shilling. It did like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even less time than that. It was called like Fuel Plus or something. The dude has done this, and then he gets bored and he gives it up. This is a reality that Tony and AEW could be facing, at which point we're all going to make fun of it. And like, okay, fine. We'll be out and done with it. And I've had these conversations with other people just being like, I wouldn't get too worried about the Ric Flair stuff based on his prior deals in sponsorship. Yeah, you know what? Let's get an apple juice and Diet Pepsi sponsorship. That would
the apple juice been a while. Good callback, Cody. Used to sipping on them juice boxes on the SmackDown post shows.
OG right here. Yeah. But the point of all this is like, I think everyone who is a hardcore AEW fan, or even just like, I don't want to say day one because then it feels gatekeepy, but I think people who found AEW as an alternative to wrestling that they didn't like and they liked what AEW's presentation was at the beginning, I think for a lot of people this became the beginning of the end of their interest in watching AEW and following AEW. From a business standpoint in AEW, I understand the idea of like, oh, the legends will draw. I'm not saying I agree with it. I do not think that this is the right way to approach it, but I'm saying I understand that in a room full of people who are trying to find ways to stabilize their ratings, to find different merchandising and IP options and just put them in the video game, put them in, give them more t-shirts at the shop. They're going to be selling the energy drinks at concessions at AEW shows. They said in the press release, they're trying to find revenue streams, and that I understand. But again, it's risk versus reward. And what happened once they announced it? The risk was very high. The reward was not good. They had a lot of rightfully upset fans being like, what did you do? Like, why did you do this? And then, of course, they bring back the tweet, and you just talked about it, Jeremy, that you can't go on these tweeting tirades about allegations and then bring in a guy who has very open allegations that he himself had. They're not even allegations. He himself has talked about it. You cannot do that. It's just that makes it look worse. So I'm not a big fan at all of this. It doesn't help that you have a roster of 150,000 people, and that's accurate. I counted it this morning. You have a big roster, and not all of them are getting their time or even opportunities to find their time. And this is one of the issues that I often find with AEW, and it's mostly out of their control. It's that they only run their television product. There are no house shows. There's no opportunity for development. The going to the indies and working the indies is one thing, but when you come to TV, you want to have a streamlined or you want to have a streamlined character development track. And on top of that, you want to be working with people who have that experience, and they don't necessarily get that on the indies. They're going and just they're working, which is good, especially if you're a young wrestler. But if you're someone who's trying to reinvent yourself or figure out what your character is, or even work a TV style, there isn't that in AEW. And I think that kind of sucks. That's one of the things that Dark and Dark Elevation kind of brought to the table, was the ability to build their wrestlers. Now I'm kind of going off on a tangent about the opportunities that should have been, but with Rick, but it lends to my point that like bringing in Rick takes away from a bunch of wrestlers who can be on your program weekly and building and working with it. And, okay. I will use this example. No, you know what? I don't want to do it. But the point is, there's no one you can pair with Rick that would make that person look good, because a lot of people would just be like, I don't want Rick, mentoring wrestler X. It just wouldn't look good. And I'm sure like it's a kiss of death. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
I think the point of Ric Flair, beyond this energy drink deal, like there are some positives in terms of what he brings to visibility. You can make money off of his merchandise. You can make money potentially at him in video games. People know who Ric Flair is. The problem with one thing is that I don't think the fan base you should go after care about Ric Flair. I don't think Ric Flair brings back old fans, right? Like, you're going to go up to my mom, be like, hey, Ric Flair's in AEW. She's like, oh, I know that person. She ain't going to start watching because Ric Flair is in AEW. Like, I don't think WWE does this when they do the legend shows and everything. It always pops a rating, right? It pops a rating for one night because you get to see them one time. And it's like, oh, that's fun. Nostalgia. Cool. If they did this every single week, no one would care about it. It would just fall. It'd be like, all right, well, when are we going to see the new people? What gets hot in wrestling? Typically, new stuff gets hot in wrestling. Trying to bring back people who are 70 years old typically doesn't get hot. Like, there aren't too many examples of it. TNA basically tried to do this and it failed. WCW, they kept running after Hogan and Flair, after they had all passed their point, what happened was we were like, no, okay, when are we going to see the new? Oh, WWE, this is what they're giving me. They're giving me these new people. That's what I actually want to see, not these older people. And then WWE, they kind of hit that point too when they had no competition of like, wait, we've seen Cena for a while now. Can we get, and Cena wasn't even like old. Now Cena goes into the nostalgia and he's working with the new people. But you gotta move on from this stuff. And that's what AEW was all about. Like, that's what it was all about. They got praised for the way they use their legends, right? Arn Anderson comes in. Oh, they're using him well. Jake Roberts, they're using him well. They use the legends well. Flair is just a different case because I do think, one, the allegations play a big part in it. It's the same thing with Hogan. Hogan is in allegations. He's ruined his own public image. Like, these guys, they have ruined their own public image. And so they don't have that goodwill with the hardcore fan base. So this is what I tweeted yesterday. The hardcore AEW fans, the core AEW fans, which I think are, MJF says it's like 7%. I don't buy that. I think the AEW fans are a lot more online than that. Like, this company was almost founded on kind of an online fan base.
The announcement was made on a BTE episode of of Double or Nothing and just the founding of the company. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, continue.
Yeah, I think the AEW, the core fans are a lot more online than the WWE fans. The WWE fans, I don't think are, because it is a lot more like kids and stuff. So I don't think they're quite as online as the AEW fans, the core fans. I didn't see any positive reactions to this. It was some older fans who were like, hey, cool, Rick, I like Rick. I grew up watching Rick. that's the fans you're going to get. And I don't think those fans are sticking around. I don't think they actually care to watch this show. If they did, they'd probably already tune in because they'd just be wrestling fans. They hear of Ric Flair being in AEW and like, okay, cool. And then they move on with their life because wrestling, they just don't care about it anymore. They don't. And honestly, if they tune in to watch Ric Flair, and I don't mean this as a knock on the new age of wrestling, if they tune in to watch Ric Flair, they're going to see all this flippy stuff and they're going to be like, not my wrestling. And then they're going to tune out. They're not the fans you want to go after. They're just not. You want to find the new fans that you can get into wrestling. Like that's what it comes down to. You want to find new fans. You don't want to try to bring back an old fan base that doesn't exist. We know it doesn't exist because if it did, when WCW went out of business, WWE would have had 8 million viewers instead of their audience basically falling in half since that time. It would have doubled, right? Those fans just don't exist. They don't. So you don't need to try to pull them back in. There's upside with Flair. Again, when it comes to merchandise, when it comes to video games, I do also think, and this is a whole different conversation, I think there's upside with Flair when it comes to media. Ric Flair's on ESPN. He did an interview with Variety. He's always on TMZ, good or bad. But like Ric Flair transcends your typical wrestling media. He just does. He's in rap videos. He transcends wrestling. People are going to see Ric Flair and be like, oh, Rick. Maybe they want to find out what he's up to. Or again, the more likely answer is, oh, there's Ric Flair. I remember him from the 80s and 90s. Let's move on with my life after that quick little wink and a nod type of thing. That's most likely what it's going to come down to. But my point is, he does the big time media stuff that Paul White is doing, that Mark Henry is doing, that Chris Jericho typically does, that Jeff Jarrett does. This is good for AEW. The different conversation is, should it be these guys? And the answer is no, it shouldn't be. What's the Young Bucks doing? What's Kenny Omega doing? What's Danielson does pretty well with media. All these guys should be doing some more media though.
Yeah. I did. You and I have talked about that on multiple occasions too. Max does media when you get to Long Island or when there's a big pay-per-view coming up and he needs to put over the title match. Why isn't Jay White out there doing media? He's a guy that would absolutely crush it. There are plenty of wrestlers that you put behind a microphone every single week, sometimes twice, 3 times a week. Max Caster, Anthony Bowens, Billy Gunn, for Christ's sake, would be fine if he wanted to do it. But instead, you're leaning on some of the people you just mentioned.
Those people do the local media. Like,
yeah,
it's honestly a little upsetting that those are the guys. Jarrett was doing all the local Louisville media this past week. Like, why is Jarrett doing this media? Jarrett was on that show for 2 seconds in a backstage segment. Maybe he was on.
Which, by the way, was like one of the most eye-popped moments on that show. It was just because of the look on their stupid faces. Yeah. That was the best to me. Sorry, continue.
I don't know, but he was on that show for 2 seconds in a backstage segment. Maybe he was on Rampage. He had a match. I don't know. I didn't read the spoilers. But if he did all this local media and you go out and you're like, oh, Jeff Jarrett did local media, I'm excited to come to the show and watch Jeff Jarrett. You probably didn't see him. Where was Jay White? Jay White's in the main event. You're right. Like, Jay White's a big one. MJF, he typically only does it when it's local Long Island. Swerve should do it. Hangman should be doing it. Young Bucks. Like, most of these guys just do it when it's local to them. Swerve, when they go to Seattle, he'll do the media. Danielson, when they go to Seattle. Yeah. Darby, like, these guys do media when it's local to them. They need to be doing media when it's just media to do.
Trying to think of the women that they could be using as well. Chris Statlander, I'm sure she's wanted to do more promo. She's wanted to get more under her belt. She's mentioned that in interviews. Sheeta, at one point, when she was champion going into London, did a shit ton of media. And that is with her own admission that she felt a little self-conscious about her English. And she did a wonderful job. She was great. She was a great ambassador for the company. Those people deserve those reps. They deserve that opportunity because, again, this kind of ties back to what I'm talking about when it comes to getting those reps and getting your opportunity to build your character. You don't get those opportunities if they're not presented to you, whether that's in the ring or out. And signing someone like Ric Flair, yeah, he'll go out and go do media, but guess what? Now suddenly Ethan Page has to sit in front of a camera on his YouTube channel in order to cut a promo or whatever it is that he's going to do.
When I interviewed Ilya Dragunov, this was before he won the title. I forget the name of the show. No Mercy, No Mercy. It was before he won the title at No Mercy. He was doing a ton of media. Some people ask for it. Like Cody and Drew are very they speak openly of like, yeah, give me as much as I can. One, because I think they understand the machine behind it all. Two, I think they want to use it as get better at promos. Drew has said this. I asked Ilya because he was doing a ton of media about that. Because I'm genuinely curious about this stuff. As someone whose large part of my job is listening to a lot of interviews, I listened to 2 hours of Ric Flair speak yesterday because he did ESPN, he did Observer, he did PWI. I got another one that I just found this morning that I'm gonna have to listen to after I get done with this show. I was doing a lot of Ric Flair. I like to know who's like what goes into them doing these media blitzes and stuff. I like to know, hey, do you want to do it or not do it? So I asked Ilya, I was like, hey, like, is this your call? Is this something they do? He's like, yeah, I don't like fully like doing it. Like, this is not something I push for type of thing, but they asked me to do it. I recognize it as an opportunity to get kind of like better at promos, get good with words and things like that. And then I recognize it as an opportunity to push the brand and push myself. Some of these guys, they might not want to do it. They need to do it. Even if they don't want to. If some of these people are saying like, hey, yeah, I don't feel like doing it, you gotta tell them like, look, you need to do this. It's good for you. It's good for us. You gotta think bigger picture here. And the WWE guys, there's probably a reason why you see the WWE guys doing so much, because they get that. And whether the younger guys don't get it or don't understand it, they're using their vlogs and everything. Like, the vlogs only go as far as they're going to go. Getting out there in front of local media and in big picture media is going to get you a lot further than these vlogs.
So I'm going to say this right off the bat, and I'm glad that you mentioned this, because this is one thing that WWE kind of does have a leg up on AEW on, and this is one time where I'm going to just do the comparison. The PC for this particular method is so useful and beneficial. They have a whole digital media zone, a whole room, a whole space where you can cut promos, where you can do character development work, where you can do interviews and media, and you have people there who are full-time working in the PC, helping you out and getting you ready for these things. They have PR branded people, for better or worse. I get that, for some media, it's like, oh Christ, I'm gonna get PR stuff. We had Snitsky on the show, and what did Snitsky do at the end of the interview? Literally pulled off his one sheet and like read off every single MLW spot he could. And you know what? It was funny for us, but like we also knew that he was going to do it, but he also gave us legitimate answers to questions we asked. He had a good time. It was fun. But that's something that the PC has, is the ability to have you in front of a camera and feeling confident and comfortable doing that. Shotzi last year or 2 years ago, even for Halloween Havoc, they had her doing the media rounds and she was nervous as hell. She said it herself, but this was an opportunity for her to get out there and do that. The stand-up scrums, every single major pay-per-view for the last year that they were doing them at, bunch of new talent, bunch of similar talent, all learning and working together. This is beneficial. Not everyone has to do it, but I see Dave in the chat saying like it's their job. And to a certain degree, yeah, everyone should have the experience of trying it. I get that some people just want to be wrestlers. That's understandable. But sometimes just being a good wrestler ain't enough. Daniel Garcia is someone who can tell you all about that. Sometimes you got to get a character going to get that eye on you. I know Daniel Garcia is not exactly he's not getting the right eye on him, but he has the right fans' eyes on him.
If I'm Daniel Garcia, I'm a little upset. The Flair stuff, but like, you're bringing out Paul White with his knees and he's getting this spot over me. Like, that to me, like, we knew it was Paul White, right? Because Jericho was like, hey, I got someone bigger than Powerhouse. Like, who's bigger than Powerhouse? Well, Big Show, ha ha ha. Like, we knew it was going to be him. But this is another example of like, what, why? You have Daniel Garcia sitting there, who they completely dropped the ball on. I believe. He should have been one in the Sammy Guevara position. I know Sammy's hurt right now. Like, best wishes to him. Hopefully, he recovers and gets feeling better. But like he should have been in that Sammy Guevara position. I think it's still, you want to say it's early with these guys because in some respects it is. And it's like, hey, I don't need to do it all right now. But then you look at the Jade situation. It's like, oh, it's early on Jade. They don't need to do everything with her. What happened? They didn't do everything they could have with her. She bounced. You look at these situations like, no, maybe if you got it and you can do it, you probably just should. And I feel like they're dropping the ball big time on Garcia because he was just great professional wrestler, Daniel Garcia. And it's like, oh, well, Jericho wants him for the JAS. Let's bring him in there to give him some entertainment so we can, sports entertain everybody. He did that. He got the feud with Bryan. He got something over, the dance. He sports entertained everybody. And it's almost like the punishment for it. This was what everybody complained with WWE. You got yourself over and they didn't push you. This is the whole Matt Cardona situation, right? Zack Ryder's like, you went out there, you got yourself over. That wasn't our plan, you dick. Get back here. No. Come back. Garcia basically did that. And it's like, no. That wasn't in our plans. Get back to teaming with 2.0 type of things. Like, well, what are you going to get over for? I feel bad for someone like Daniel Garcia, who I think very highly of.
He should rebrand himself to Danny Cardona. Call himself the indie god and let him have that gimmick on AEW TV.
We're going to get into like Dynamite and stuff here in a second. I want to
hit these super chats. Oh, okay. You go.
Yeah. It says TK needs more help, maybe more hands off. I don't know if he needs more help. He brought in what?
He's got help.
Yeah. He brought in Jimmy Jacobs. He brought in Will Washington. He's got people around him. I don't only think he needs it. Pat Buck, like there's people there. It's not necessarily help. I think he needs why people around him. I tweeted this. It didn't get over because I don't think anybody understood it and because engagement sucks on Twitter. I tweeted, now I forget the name. Oh man, I'm blanking. Mindy from Animaniacs. Any anime, there's only two types of people in this world, everybody. Either like Animaniacs or you don't.
Or you either like it or you suck.
Yeah. So Mindy from Animaniacs, she just goes around, she just asks why. What you doing? Oh, I'm having lunch. Why? Because I'm on a break. Why? Yeah. I'm tired of work. Why? Like you just need someone to ask why on a lot of this stuff. Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega. Why? Kenny Omega, he's teamed with Chris Jericho. Why? Well, they're the Golden Jets. Okay. Why? Well, they have Canadian history. Why? Jericho, Kenny Omega he's like he cares more about Chris Jericho than he does about the Young Bucks right now. Why? Well, because of the Canadian stuff. Okay. Why does Kenny Omega not care that Hangman Page's house was broken? Why does Hangman Page not care that his house was broken into? His house gets broken into, and the next time we see Hangman Page, I'm coming out here to defend my 6-man titles. Why
aren't you tearing up the backstage looking for Swerve?
Yeah. I'm just going to come out here and defend my 6-man title. Why? Like, have someone who just asked why to this kind of stuff.
What's really funny to me is I saw someone in the chat being like, you brought in Pat Buck, who didn't produce really good stuff on Raw. You brought in Jimmy Jacobs, who did the spooky stuff in TNA. That's not all Jimmy Jacobs did. Jimmy Jacobs actually has one hell of a mind for wrestling. I think at the end of the day, you got a guy who just, he's getting pitched a lot of stuff. And I think there's just, thank you, Oreos. Mint Oreos, no less. I saw the green. You've just got a guy in Tony who has a lot going on and gets the final say. So here we are. Yeah, Jared said it. Basically TK needs someone to challenge him. That's what it is. And I don't know who that is. And I don't know if there is someone who does that or not. It could very well be that there are people who are just like, all right, cool. Good meeting. Let's go. This is the creative and everything just kind of goes. I'm going to read this super chat from my Soul from earlier. As an AEW fan from the jump, I think the harshest reality for me is that TK has more carny in him than I thought. I think I really thought he'd be the antithesis of what we have for 20 years before. So I don't necessarily think that Tony is a carny. I think Tony sometimes seemingly bends the knee to other voices in his room. Seemingly, I'm not saying I'm not going to tell you
I'm
it's what
more
happened.
commenting on the term carny can be taken
Yes.
a lot of ways. I think Tony is a wrestling promoter and a wrestling fan. We saw the promoter side of got an important announcement, and we see the fan side of I loved Ric Flair growing up. I love Sting. Let's do this. Like, he's a wrestling promoter and a wrestling fan. Carney is, you can take that a lot of different ways.
Yeah. What I was
sure, if you why Sobel, sorry, Joel. Why Sobel says that's Carney. Fine. Like, if that's what you want to call it, that's fine.
Yeah. And my general point was just that Tony has people of influence around him, and there are ongoing conversations that these people have about how to run their program. And yeah, listen, things have changed because the people around Tony have changed over the years. And so I'm not surprised to see that there are some people who are feeling a little bit disenfranchised from where things have been. How many times have you and I sat here, Jeremy, and I said, Tony once said that he had a whole, spiral notebook full of Dynamite results from when he was 13, and he's running through those. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's not sustainable, because you're writing based on nothing when you have personalities involved. Now you have investment in talent. Now you have people who are going to be against what you're trying to do, and they might push back, or maybe whatever you thought about when you were 16 isn't really going to work now that you are in your 40. Are you 40 now? Regardless, you're now that you're older, it's not going to hit the same. It's not this in you, but you stick to this thing because, again, Tony doesn't pivot well. We talked about that as well. So we get stuck in this feedback loop where just everyone wants it to change, nothing changes, and then when it changes, it's not very good because of the people he's potentially involved with.
How many times have I made the joke that hold on. The engagement accounts. Engagement accounts. I'm going to fight all of them.
Yes, let's go. Let's fight them now. I'm going to talk about engagement accounts in just a second. Don't you worry.
Oh, okay.
No, I want to get into that in a sec because go ahead if you want to make your point there. Can you beat me up?
It's just people are just like, oh, I saw this engagement account run this quote. Maybe we should run it. It's like the only reason the engagement account has this quote is because we did run it.
As is tradition.
Like, what are we doing? Anyway, sorry.
By the way, I don't think Punk disillusioned TK. I think Punk was a wake-up call in certain ways to how to handle your relationships with talent. So I don't think, and it's a very different tightrope to walk. Yeah, that's what I'm used to when I edit this show.
Yeah, sorry. I try to be better about muting my mic, but like, I just get hit with stuff in the middle of the show, and I'm like, I gotta respond to this right now, especially if it's work related in our staff chat and everything. Tony, how many times have I made the joke? EWR TEW booking. Tony's just he's gonna book stuff based on letter grades and stuff, and I feel like he does that a lot with some of these segments. I talked about this on Spotlight. I'm not gonna go back into it, but he did the angle where Jay White pins MJF. Like, cool, like that's not gonna get a great rating on EWR. Like, just Jay White pinning MJF. That match, the Guns, they lack overness. It's not gonna their work ethic or their work rate not graded as high as other people. You know what would be good? Acclaimed in MJF scissoring, overness, rated on overness. This will go great. And so it just ends the show with that. It's like, you don't have to do that. Like, it's okay. It's okay to let things breathe a little bit, and you don't have to jam everything into one show. Like, it's cool. It's not gonna hurt anything. It's just not. Like, Dynamite, somebody, I think it was Jeff Valley Driver of yesterday in our chat, was like, this has been how Dynamite's been for years. It's just been fast-paced. It's like, yeah, like, that's the truth. And that's what a lot of people like about the show. Like, that's what a lot of people like about Dynamite. We've talked about it. Like, sometimes it's a little too fast. And when it comes to WWE, sometimes it's a little too slow. I thought Collision had a nice little balance for a little while. But yeah, just because it's been too fast and it's been that way for years doesn't mean now is like, oh, okay, well, now we accept it. It has been that way. We've talked about it for years. It feels very much worse nowadays. It feels like it's now really moving too fast nowadays.
So I want to turn back to Flair for just a second. Last night, while I was about to cover Impact, this actually happened before Impact went on the air, and that's important to this story. Someone had put out, on their account, if you're not going to interview Ric Flair, then like you're lying to yourself. I'll find the stupid tweet. But essentially it was okay, whatever. They've taken it down. They was like, you're lying to yourself if you don't want to interview Ric Flair. And I replied, I was like, no, I have less than zero interest in interviewing Ric Flair, especially in 2023. I don't want to platform someone who has allegations against him. I don't want to platform someone who can barely tell the stories he tells now. And when he does, they change from minute to minute. And then finally, this is the most important part. Can we please, for the love of Christ, whoever you believe in, if there's a deity, a man in the sky, clouds, whatever it is that you believe in, the dirt in the soil, stop boxing everyone into the same box. Stop it. In what world do you think that we all operate on the same plane? We had a report on Fightful Select going back to the CM Punk stuff that WWE expected people to ask about Punk, and nobody asked about Punk. And that's I have
about Taylor Swift.
Well, I have my own theories about that, and a lot of that comes from WWE putting out an announcement that they were going to do a post-show presser on the weekend of the event. That kept a lot of people who would normally be in the room asking those questions away from the room. And that's not WWE like doing it on purpose. I think it was literally a very late decision to have that press conference, which I don't know why they did it, because there was nothing of like super note that happened at this particular show. Regardless, why would you want everyone doing the same thing? Why do you think it's okay that everyone wants to ask these questions to people? Be like, oh, I just want to ask him about the great matches he had. Cool, great, all right, fine. You know what I'm going to ask him about? I'm going to ask him about the allegations. I'm going to ask him about the embarrassing times he had on WCW Nitro and Thunder between 99 and 2001. I'm going to ask him about the set that he couldn't walk down because he slipped on it once and then became a little baby bitch about it for the next 3 years. You remember that set, by the way?
Wow.
The alien set?
No.
Yeah, so there's someone actually put a whole supercut of it. So when they did the WCW alien logo, and you remember it would part at the center and then the wrestlers would walk out. So the first time they did it, apparently whatever was on the rampway that had the C in the WCW, he slipped because something was coming out of it. I think it was embossed, the C on the ramp. And then from then on in, you can see every single week, Rick would walk down the aisle, but he would avoid the C, or he'd step over it. He'd step to the side. He just avoided the whole thing. And it's awkward and hilarious all the same. It's on Reddit, I think. Regardless, I know. And now you got to go looking on Reddit, which is a hell zone of its own.
Ric Flair slip instead of Ric Flair.
Yeah, Ric Flair slip, which I'm sure is another thing that comes up. My point is, everyone has a different reason for being here. If we were offered Ric Flair for 20 minutes on this show, and Jeremy and I had to make that decision, I can tell you from my side, the answer would be no. I would not be interested in having a conversation or platforming this guy because there's nothing that is of any interest to me.
I would tell you from my side, the answer would be yes. And I would ask the questions that you kind of mentioned. Mike Strahl says, so you wouldn't want to interview Hulk Hogan, Joel. Look, I would
absolutely not. Same thing. I'm going to get bullshit answers from a bullshit human being who has not told the truth in 55, 60 years.
All it's fair. Like Hogan was on Helwani's show. Helwani asked him about the stuff. He gave the answers he's going to give. Flair's going to give the answers that he's going to give. I will say that if we were offered these people, and Joel doesn't have to do the interview if he doesn't feel comfortable doing it. I'd understand that and respect that as well. I would take the interview because I know I would ask those questions, and I would be upfront, be like, I'm going to ask about this. Now, if he doesn't want to do the interview now, that's y'all's call, but I'm going to ask about this. Like, I would make it clear that nothing's off limits, right? If they say stuff is off limits, I'd be like, no, I don't want the interview.
That's fair.
Once it comes to that, then I would turn the interview down. But I would take the interview because I would ask about it. And if they're going to give me some bullshit answer, they're going to give me some bullshit answer. I feel confident that I would at least press a little bit on those things. And then you go on from there. And look, I understand why Joel wouldn't want to do it because you don't want to give him the platform. You think it's going to be bullshit. And I completely understand and respect that. I would do it because I feel confident in the fact that I would just press on it and get an answer. If it's bullshit, whatever. Like that's on them at that point. But I'm not going to disillude my own self and my own credibility of just being like, yeah, I'll take it, but not going to ask any of this stuff. I understand both sides of it. I do. I think when you get those interviews, those are questions you have to ask. And when people don't ask that, that's when I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And some very respected people that have interviewed these people and not asked those questions. And I think that's a little, it's a little upsetting, but what can you do?
Yeah. All I want to do is interview Scott D'Amore.
Hey, cool.
I had someone ask me offline. I thought this was very interesting. They were like, have you ever been in an interview and like things got weird, or you thought that they were gonna not like you or get upset with you? Because we sometimes ask jokey questions, and I said to that person, I was like, well, in our interview with Tasha Steeles, I kind of pushed back at her about her giving that answer about where have you been, and she was like, I was in the kitchen doing the flavor thing, and and I said, no, you did this, you gave that same response last time. I don't want this. Give me something else. And she didn't give me anything else, but I was kind of expecting her or, Impact's PR to just be like, what the hell is this? Luckily, not the case. I think we handled it in a certain way. I'm proud of the way that Jeremy and I handle.
They pulled their match from Bound for Glory over that interview, Joel. They made it a pre-show match.
That's fine because it kept our algorithm in place. Can't see. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But I am proud of the way Jeremy and I conduct interviews because we have fun, but we also try to be as informative as we can. As much as we're going to talk to Simon Miller about his match at Impact coming together, yeah, I was going to ask him about toe wrestling because it's on his Instagram, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious and worth getting a story out of, even a funny one for the audience who's watching. That being said, I don't feel like platforming someone like Rick would be beneficial to our audience. And Jeremy, I also understand and agree with you to a very large point that there is a benefit to interviewing Rick in terms of as long as the limitations are not, as long as there are no limitations to questions, and being able to push back and being able to try and have that honest conversation that, again, honestly, I don't think we would get. I think you would get, it was a different time is probably the answer you would get if you pushed them. But again, that's me just assuming. We would get numbers. That's about it. And I don't know if those are numbers that I personally want.
That's fine. Like, again, I understand your point on this too. I wouldn't do it for numbers. I would do it to almost show credibility. And I don't know, maybe that's too self-fulfilling, too egotistical.
Very journalist of you. Very journalistic, which but I appreciate that because there's truth to that. It does show credibility to us. It does show that we work hard and we take this seriously.
It would just be almost a show of like, oh, these guys got a Ric Flair interview. That's cool. It's not this fluff interview that everyone else, hey, promote your stuff. Hey, talk about these old days and all of this stuff. Like they actually ask some hard questions. And then you become like, oh, these guys, we know they're going to ask kind of tough questions, but also do jokes and stuff like that. Like, we've had, so it was a joke in the chat of when I said I interviewed Titus, and I was very vague about the issues with that interview. And so now that the interview's out and stuff, the issues was I screwed up the recording. I did not record his audio because there was a lot of stuff that went on with that interview. We were running late. I didn't get a code, and I thought, like, I was very kind of flustered with it.
To also just to add color, it was a Zoom interview and not.
It wasn't StreamYard.
Yeah, StreamYard is how we
Yeah.
typically do our streaming. So this was on Zoom.
And I'm not used to Zoom. The only other Zoom interview I've done is with Ilya. And that I did like 20 minutes of setup with my wife to make sure it ran okay. And even then, I spent like another 5 minutes because the settings changed when I got to Ilya. And so I was doing that. I felt really bad that I kept Ilya. I felt really bad that I kept Ilya that long. But I was already running late with Titus. I only had a 15-minute window, and it was already past that 15 minutes. Like, so we had started late, and I was very flustered. I forgot to click some settings. I did not get his audio on that. And Joel, fortunately, they recorded it as well. Joel saved me in that he pieced it all together because I got the recording. I had my recording. I sent it to Joel. Joel did all of that, put it all together. It came out how it came out, which I think is very good. But when I mentioned like, oh yeah, there were some issues with that interview, that's what I was talking about. But people in the chat were like, oh, Jeremy asked about Vince. He asked about that Vince promo. What happened on there? And I was like, yeah, I did. He's going to give me the answer that he's going to give me. That's fine. But I was not going to interview Titus and not bring it up. And there are ways to bring this stuff up too. If you listen to that interview, if you watch that interview, I did not say, hey, you came out there, all this stuff with Vince is going on with that. Because you do kind of have to massage this stuff a little bit, especially when it is working with partners and things like that. But a good interviewer, and I don't think I'm very good, but a good interviewer will frame it in a certain way to where they know what you're talking about, you know what you're talking about, and they're going to give you the response that they're going to give you. I don't need to ask Titus about Vince's allegations. He has nothing to do with that. When people are like, oh, why didn't you ask Bianca about this? When they talk to Sean about like, it's a friggin' Be a Star rally. You're going to ask Bianca about this stuff. They got nothing to do with that. Okay. They just don't. You don't need to ask him about that. But in the case of Titus, he came out there in the middle of all of these allegations and everything and was part of that story. So I asked him about his part in that story. That's all you can do. In the case of Ric Flair, his part's pretty big. His part of his story is that it's not some adjacent type of thing. He's part of it. Wysolable says the Santana Ortiz question. Yeah.
Can I talk about that real quick?
Yeah, go
I'll
for it.
pull the curtain back. When Jeremy and I popped up before the show went live, we were talking about it, and Jeremy said, I'm going to ask him about Ortiz, and I was apprehensive about it.
Yeah.
I even said, I was like, I don't know, like, is that going to upset him? Is he going to want to do that? And Jeremy was kind of like, well, it's part of a story now, and it's been reported, so may as well get him on the record. And Jeremy was right. And it was handled perfectly because Santana clearly knew that was something that was inevitably going to come up. So that was one time where like I very happily took the L when it came to that conversation, and it worked out perfectly.
The Santana thing, yes, Joel was like, I don't know about this. I'm like, no, he's on. I believe this is like the first interview he's really done since all this came out. It's on television. They're talking about it on Twitter. We have to ask about this. When Court Bauer was on this show, the Jacob Fatu, charity allegations were a thing. I brought that up. I interviewed MSL and the stuff with Erez and the contracts and stuff came up. I brought that up. I'm not afraid to ask these questions that I feel should be asked that are, major talking points. If the talent doesn't like it, or if their PR people doesn't like it, one, they've never said anything to us. So, that's like, we've still done interviews with MLW talent. He's been cool with us doing stuff. He keeps giving us people. Like, we ask Gangrel about Paige Van, like, that's not a big hard hitting type of thing, but like, it's something to ask about. Like, I'm not afraid to ask this stuff, and I want to interview people, and I hope they expect to be asked about this if it is, one, topical, and two, I get newsworthy. Gangrel was like, I don't know, haven't heard from her. But if it is relevant to the conversation, and this is not to pat myself on the back or anything. It is what I feel. What?
Do it.
I'm Barry Horowitz myself. It's what I feel of like, hey, if these people are going to come on our show, I feel this information is relevant to, one, me, and two, our audience. And Sean has said this before. It's like, oh, why doesn't let's talk about the CM Punk thing that was not asked at Fastlane. It's like, why didn't you ask it? We had Uchino on Ricocchino on after that, and he asked about Adam Edge at that press conference. He even said, like, I had the Punk question lined up. I thought someone else was going to ask, and then nobody did, and so they moved on. Sean's report was like WWE was expecting people to ask about Punk, and they kind of had a pre-written answer for it. Nobody asked about Punk. You can't expect other people to ask these questions. So one, you just got to ask them yourself. This is not a knock on Chino or anything like that. I think had he gotten another question, he would have asked that question. But you can't expect other people to ask these questions, and you can't expect other people to know what kind of content you want, because they're only out for their content. Like, this is the content that they are interested in. I'm interested in getting kind of journalistic answers while also having some fun. I think people get that from a lot of our interviews. I hope people get that from a lot of our interviews. It's like, yeah, we're going to ask some hard-hitting stuff, if it's valid. And then we're going to have a little fun and ask about toe wrestling and shit. Like, Simon Miller is not someone we're going to fucking grill about things. But I did think it was relevant to bring up was there any apprehensiveness to do this stuff, seeing the backlash of like, oh, you're a journalist and wrestling, like, the crossover type of thing.
What's funny? I don't even consider that. No, this is no offense to Simon. I don't see Simon as a reporter type. I
don't either. He doesn't do like scoops and reporting and stuff.
Yeah, I've always seen him as like a content creator who wrestles, and like, to me, it was just like, yeah, this is happening. And again, on the show, when we talked about the thing with Joe Hendry, I was just like, oh, this is great. Like, I put it over in the interview, and I'll say it again. Like, the way that came together was so well done and so creative and different for wrestling that it worked. So yeah, I don't see Simon Miller in that world, and I don't understand anyone who was just like, oh, you're a journalist. And it's like, I don't see him writing.
Yeah. And like, I'm with you. I brought it up just because, people do that shit. Like,
sure.
I assume if I ever do something in wrestling, which will never happen, I don't want it to happen, people will come in. I don't know if I have a big enough following, but again, Sean does it, but Sean is like a legitimate reporter when it comes to that stuff. The whole point of this is, like, if Joel doesn't want to do certain interviews, I completely understand that. I respect him I understand why he wouldn't do that. And I respect his position on that. But I won't turn an interview down assuming there are no strings attached to it. If they come back at us and are like, hey, no, we can't talk about this, this, and this, then I would be like, all right, then you know what, we're not gonna do that interview in that case. Then that's not for us. That's not something we want to do. And again, if Ric Flair's people came to us, and I don't think this would ever happen, said, hey, you guys want an interview, I would tell them, yes, is anything off limits? And if they say this, then be like, okay, we don't want to do it. And if they say no, and Joel doesn't want to do it, that's completely fine. I'll do it myself, and I'll ask the questions that I feel need to be asked.
We'll bring him on, and I'll bring myself off and be like, Rick, fuck you. And I'll just walk off. No, you know what?
That's a little unprofessional.
It's a little unprofessional. I wouldn't do it. I really wouldn't. But to be perfectly honest, these are conversations that you and I would typically have offline, and then we would sort it out, whether that is to interview somebody, what we would ask in the case of a sensitive topic or whatever it is. And we kind of make the decision from there. It just comes down to how we collaborate and how we do the show.
Yeah.
That's it. So some fans want wrestling reporters to ask hard-hitting questions like they're in a White House press conference or in the halls of Congress. Here's the thing. It's entertainment. Like, wrestling is not a life or death situation. We're not handling people who are, misappropriating funds of the taxpayers. And
we got a 69 celebration tomorrow night. Okay.
Like, that's what it is in wrestling. Like, I think it's important to hold people in the community accountable, but I do not think that your immediate reaction to everything is to make them persona non grata or just like be done completely. There is, again, this is the thing with Ric Flair and the louder conversation, is that there's a history there. There's an understanding, but what's going on now and what we know does tarnish that legacy. And for a lot of people, they're going to choose the way that they talk about or cover him or handle Ric Flair now.
Yeah. Cam Hawkins, pal. Cam. Shout out to Cam. Great piece on the Ringer
Yes.
on LA Night this morning that I read. That Cam's so good. So good.
We have to stop him. He's so good. He must be
true.
stopped.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. Cam said, I'll turn down the shit out of somebody I don't rock with. I've done it with WWE. But, everybody is free to turn down an interview. If you don't turn down an interview, I don't begrudge you for that. But I will kind of be like, if you do an interview and don't ask certain questions, I will just be like, I don't know about that. Like, I still got to cover it. The thing is like, I'm probably the wrong person to speak on that portion of it because my job is to cover shit like regardless on everything. Like, that's just what it is. I have to, I got to cover a lot of stuff. So that's what it is for me. Yeah. Ric Flair does all these interviews. He's not asked about that stuff. He's not asked about that stuff. And, I still got to cover that though. That's just what it is.
So, all the champions in AEW are not serious. There's my transition right there.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Dynamite. Let's talk Dynamite real quick because it's very funny that we were like, oh, we're gonna talk about Dynamite, and then we just kind of got a full 45 minutes on
Flair
and everything. No, I love that we had that conversation. I thought it was very good. That's kind of what this show is. It's tangents and rantings. So MJF is the world heavyweight champion. You don't know that because he doesn't have the belt. Nobody's important. None of the titles mean anything right now by the feelings of it. You have world tag team champions that you wouldn't really know exist because there are trios going after him or after them. You have Shida, who has a film star who's gone crazy trying to go after her world championship and gets filmed in black and white. You have the trios champions who are excited for the 69th day as trios champs and don't have and one of the members is trying to have sex with Max Jacob Friedman. So there's that. And then you got a TNT champion who's, well, the best ever. The only serious championship in AEW right now, believe it or not, and again, is currently on the shoulders of the guy that nobody wanted to ever take seriously as a wrestler, and that's Orange Cassidy, and that is the AEW International Championship. Jeremy, there's a lot going on. We got to talk about it. By the way, the Orange Cassidy match against Claudio from this week was fantastic. That was a great match. I very rarely take issue with the in-ring work that comes from these shows, but man, so much of these storylines are just not doing it for me. And so many of these titles are just not important. They're not even props. They're barely there. One of them is, and it was the one that opened the show.
Yeah, the Orange Cassidy stuff is always good. Sorry, I keep getting these message. Staff gonna fight.
Tell them engagement accounts to FO. Tell them Ric Flair can wait for another day.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'm saying. Oh, all these comedy feuds and stuff. Like, I'm kind of with you on it. The world title. The backstage stuff was funny. I like that Wardlow actually went after MJF. Finally, I kept saying Wardlow's being a bitch. Just go get him. He's right there. So he went after him. Like, I did like that. There were some funny moments in there. Does it all need to be comedy? I think that's what kind of Joel is getting at. Is like, sometimes you do need the serious stuff. And Orange Cassidy and Moxley is very serious, as it should be. Like, we got injury playing a part to this kind of stuff, and it is a lot of comedy though, and I wish some of the comedy would breathe a little bit. And that was my whole point on Spotlight yesterday, is like, Jay White pinned MJF. That should be a big deal. Like, pin the world champion. First time MJF, I believe, has been pinned on Dynamite. Like, he's lost on Dynamite, but I don't think he's ever been pinned until that match on Wednesday. That should be a big deal. And by the end of it, it was just 69 celebration. They scissored, ha ha ha. Like, that was the takeaway.
Billy Gunn yelling over the
And
censors.
Billy Gunn was the most over person in that. He's like, "You're gonna scissor him." Like, yeah, fucking tell him, Billy.
It was, yeah, that was something else. And again, it was like, so okay, Max took. I gotta differentiate between Max Caster and MJF. That's another whole problem because I call MJF Max most of the time now. Anyway, Max Caster takes a bullet for MJF. So does that mean that Max Caster gets to take MJF out on a date now? Is that what we're going on? Like again, I don't know what the Max Caster thing is all about. It's just, it's a very weird. Like you can call it teenage comedy or sophomore comedy, and that's fine. I love that shit, but it just doesn't. It doesn't work when every other storyline you have is that, and when your main title, your world title, is not even important to the overarching story you're trying to say. Like if I'm Max, I would just I would be more than pissed that I don't have my title. But instead, I'm trying to get friends. I'm trying to find friends. I'm trying to put my Ring of Honor tag titles on the line. The World Championship means nothing. And what's more frustrating is, like you said, you had Jay White decisively pin MJF in the middle of the ring. And yeah, you know what? Maybe that was just giving you that image. And the last few weeks have been Jay White's going to be the guy, but he's not going to be the guy right now. And that's fine. You're building Jay White's stock, but the overall storytelling is just not working for me. It's a comedy story that just has no legs.
I feel like heel MJF would absolutely hate babyface MJF.
And again, but that's the thing. We're having this conversation is like, is this still heel MJF trying to act as if he's a babyface so that he, by the things that he knew about written wrestling, is he putting on the facade, or is he slowly just believing his own shit?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll have to see whenever Adam Cole gets back or not back, where they end up going with the MJF story. They were clearly throw a curveball with the Adam Cole injury. You know, what was it supposed to lead to? I thought it just introducing the tag team titles convoluted that thing even more. And then now with the Cole injury, it's convoluted with everything, because now MJF just needs a bunch of friends and everything. I like that MJF has a lot of targets on his back. I wish that was presented a little bit differently, in the fact that he's going after the, I wish it wasn't so comedy with all these targets on his back when he doesn't even have the title with him. I wish he would just kind of present it in a different way, and he's more concerned about the comedy than like, hey, here's Wardlow coming after me. Here's, like, he mentions it, but then he's still running around doing all the stuff. I go back to that Samoa Joe segment where he just like accepted Joe's handshake and he's like, oh, he wants to, like, huh? This is not the MJF. This is the why. This is the why portion of things. Why does MJF just immediately accept Samoa Joe's handshake and not think he wants something in return? Like, you can't dumb down babyface Max after him being the smartest heel in the world. That's a disconnect to me.
Before this one guy who's inevitably going to leave a comment on the video saying they tell their stories differently and it's a different presentation to wrestling. Yeah, it is. It ain't very good right now. It was good when the ideas were good and different. Right now, what they're doing is repeating a lot of the old stuff that doesn't really work anymore. They're repeating the same stuff across different storylines. Again, Toni Storm, we had a great time talking about this sudden development of character. Why did she get a title shot? Because she gone batshit crazy.
Yeah, she lost some matches before that, but yeah, at least she won a couple of matches. Like, you know, at least they gave her some victories.
You know, you're right. And again, that's a whole, the women's division and all that. And we've beaten that dead horse, unfortunately, way too many times that even I'm tired of talking about it. But it like, she comes out after the Sheeta and Willow match, which again, great match. We talk about it was a good match as we expected, and they did the thing that I told you they would do, and that was move forward the Willow Sky Blue Julia Hart story in a very strange way, in my opinion. But regardless, they bring out Toni Storm. This was the production on this was fudged up. They go to beat up Sheeta. Sheeta goes to beat up Toni Storm on the ramp. and then they fight to the back and they go to black. Commentary is confused because they thought they went to black suddenly for a commercial, and then you have Tony Schiavone being like, oh, the lights went out, as if like they didn't know this was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then they came up and it was Julia Hart, and then they did the Sky Blue reveal. And basically when Willow came out without the makeup, I was like, okay, so we're just scrapping the mist thing, or what are we doing here? And then Sky Blue came out and misted Julia Hart. I don't know where it goes from here. I feel like we'll see another double cross by Full Gear or something. But yeah, it was, and yeah, again, why Solo being like the knee that she'd hit on Tony was awesome. Yes, it was very well done. The action is often very well done. The story is just a little strange to me.
The post-match stuff was more important than the match, which happens too regularly now. When it came to, I pitched this on Spotlight yesterday, and I don't want to fully rehash my entire words, but the Willow and Shida match ended up being just kind of okay. It was there, and it was there in the first place because I ranted about Willow probably shouldn't be having this title match anyway. The joke I made was, hey, let's do 2 women's matches, guys. Let's we thought about that before. Do a Shida match, whether it's a title eliminator or a title match. Do a Shida match. Give her a defense, because that's all you care about, is to add defenses to her record and stuff. And then do the post match with Tony, because that's all you care about, is the post match with Tony. And then do a Willow and Sky match, whether they're a tag team, or do a Willow singles match or a Sky singles match, to give them a victory, so they actually get a victory. So when you give them their inevitable title shot, they have a win under their belt. And then do the post-match stuff, because that's all you care about, is the post-match stuff. Do 2 women's matches. And I understand that, people are going to be mad at like 2 women's matches that were only 4 minutes each. How long was this Willow and Shida match anyway? Like, let's see. The Willow and Shida match ended up running 9 minutes and 56 seconds. So if you give me 2 5-minute women's matches, is that just as good as 1 10-minute women's matches? Are you more happy? Are you still complaining? I assume everybody's just gonna complain for the sake of complaining. But one can give me like a 7-minute Shida defense. Give me like a 4-minute Sky Blue Willow tag team match or singles match. Do your post-match angles. At least it feels like you're featuring, and then you're getting more women on the show as well, because whoever Shida beats, whoever Willow beats, Sky beats, they beat as a tag team. Like, at least you're kind of getting some more women out there, even if they're losing. But again, the post-match angle is what mattered. And that's what it was here. They did the match. It was fine. And then they did the post-match stuff, and that's all that we were supposed to care about, is this post-match stuff. I don't know where they're going with this story. I did like that Sky Blue did the mist on Julia, because that was I thought they were just going to do the same. Hey, here's Sky Blue. She's bad now. Creepy Sky.
I'm going to nitpick for a sec again. If they knew that this is where this was going, why the fuck?
Oh, if you mentioned this Scooby-Doo gear,
they let her have
God.
Scooby-Doo gear. It doesn't make, again, this is the character development conversation that I'm trying to have. Why didn't a producer, a coach, whatever, say, you ever think about maybe just wrestling in all black for a couple of weeks? And she'll be like, well, it's Halloween, so I'm getting the special gear. Great, wear the special gear on the indies. Don't wear it on AEW TV, because you're trying to move forward a plot, some sort of story. And those little things, those little story things, that works. I will go. Sorry, I'm going to go across the aisle again. I'm going to talk WWE. Bloodline, all black, red shoes. When you don't have the shoes, you're out of the bloodline. There is something to little presentation pieces that get me, at least. The wearing the fucking Scooby-Doo gear when you're trying to get through the spooky thing just made no sense. I know. Why do I hate fun? I hate fun when it doesn't make sense.
The way more egregious thing is Hangman Page 1 week after his house gets broken into is like, I gotta wrestle this tag team 6-man title match. These are very important titles to defend. And then Kenny Omega being like, this thing with Jericho is way more important than this group that we were so happy to bring back together, and my friend's house getting broken into type of thing. I gotta really focus on this thing I got going on with Chris Jericho, because the Don Callis family story has not run its course at this point. Like, that's That's way more egregious than Scooby-Doo gear, Joel Pearl.
Fucking, if Hangman came out looking like Scooby-Doo, he'd be feeling a different way about it, Jeremy Lambert.
I would feel worse about it because like, why you got Scooby-Doo gear when your house is getting broken into? What's happening? What's happening here? What's going?
Well,
what are we doing?
Swerve ransacked his house, so all he could make out with during the fire was a Scooby-Doo onesie.
I kind of feel bad for Swerve, man, because he's doing these good pieces. Like when they attacked Nick Wayne and they bloodied him up and everything. And like, this is a really cool, like, oh man, this is a cool, like little beatdown. And then they just kicked AR Fox out like 2 weeks later after all of this because he lost a match. And then he does this thing with Hangman. And then the follow-up to his like videos here, which should show like really villainous shit. The babyface counterparts haven't lived up to their side of the villainous shit. And I don't know who to fully put that on, but it feels like the baby faces should be doing a little bit more here after Swerve like does this good work outside of the ring.
I have no pushback on that. It's true.
And people are saying AR Fox screwed AR Fox. And like, yeah, I understand what people are saying. You could write that differently. You didn't have to write that. Like, it's not, I understand that sure, AR Fox, messed up and couldn't go to London and everything. They didn't have to do the kick out of the group and everything.
Could have injured him. They could have injured him. Look what happened to Phoenix.
Yeah.
They just injured him and took him out of the Anarchy in the Arena match. But yeah. With all that in mind, yeah, Swerve continues to do good stuff. I have no idea where this all goes to unless you do Swerve gets a title shot in the new year, or maybe Swerve gets the World End title shot. Like, what do you want to do?
I've seen people, they're having the match at Full Gear. I've seen people say that, and typically when they do these rematches, it becomes a 3-match thing, right? It becomes a trilogy. So the consensus is that Hangman's going to win. You set up the third match. I've seen people say that Swerve wins, and then Hangman like hits a breaking point with all this. He gets fed up with the Elite stuff. He gets fed up with the Young Bucks. He gets fed up with Kenny not having his back, and he goes heel. I do wonder what that looks like. Yeah, I wonder what a heel Hangman. I think he'd be good. I like Hangman. I think he's good in whatever role you kind of give him. They've really cooled him off over the last year, but I do wonder what that looks like if Hangman ends up going heel out of that and basically turns on the Young Bucks. And I don't know if that's the right play because I feel weird. It's sort of the Nick Wayne play. Like this dude got his ass kicked and then he just turns heel. Hangman gets his house broken into and everything. And then it's just, we're going to turn, he's the heel somehow out of all of this. You got to figure out how to book a baby face that ain't comedy.
So the Young Bucks are currently trying to potentially turn heel. I don't know what we're doing. So
they were working heel. That t-shirt turned heel on Nick.
You want to fill the people in?
He couldn't get the shirt off. It was like tried to struggling.
And then after the
t-shirt went into business for itself.
And then after the match, they go ape shit. And you know what? I like that. I like that the Young Bucks were showing that passion, that they were pissed off. They lost the match. They lost the titles, and they're pissed off that their friend is being tormented by his rival. I like that. Show that emotion. And then they go back and they're like, Kenny, why do you like this Jericho guy more than us? We're the Elite. As long as this isn't another Elite breakup to come back together story, because we've seen that a few times already. As long as we're not doing that, let's move towards some sort of heel turn. Let Kenny turn on Jericho at the pay-per-view. Let the Elite all simultaneously go heel.
See, okay, then I think they're better as
Hangman
heels.
ain't gonna do it. So.
But I think they're better as heels. But if Kenny turns heel, it's like he got screwed over by Don Callis, and the end game is Kenny is a heel. They got to babyface some of these guys. Like they're the ones getting screwed over here. The end game cannot just be you got screwed over, now you're a heel type of thing. Like you gotta babyface somebody. Yeah,
you do. The answer to everything isn't always turn him heel, and I agree, or just turn him face, whatever it is. Yeah, it's just it's a little confusing right now, and for me, and for anyone who's just like, y'all criticize AEW too much. Well, maybe listen, if you're enjoying it, good for you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you enjoy wrestling for the enjoyment that you get from it. For us, it ain't hitting right now, and that's why we have this show.
Do it in the weeds review show and tell us how.
Yes,
critical.
Do it, and make sure it's 10 minutes or less, because that's how you get noticed on YouTube.
Yeah,
make shorts. We need people to make shorts for us. And then, so actually, I like that Matt Black from WrestleZone had mentioned that the idea of having the Young Bucks not do the match at Full Gear against Starks and Big Bill, but instead have FTR take on Starks and Big Bill, maybe win the titles, maybe not, doesn't matter, because then the Bucks come out afterwards and say, our title matches for anytime, anywhere, and we want it right now. After the match, they have a grueling tag team match. Whoever wins, and the Young Bucks just come in, take advantage of the situation, win the tag titles right there. Big shock. And this cements that the Young Bucks are heels. If you do that, I read that and I was like, I like this idea. It's such a shitty thing to do, and it's a really good way to cement the Bucks as heels.
I like, they're better as heels. Like, they are better as heels. So I don't mind that. Then you're going to have to, depending on who wins that match, are you baby facing FTR? I guess they're baby face enough at this point. If Ricky and Bill win, then you're baby facing them. And I don't think they should be baby face. Like, they are definitely heels. So you should do a quick switch on FTR. But then I don't need FTR doing this complaining nonsense of like, we beat you when you were at your best. Like, then.
Oh no, the World's End thing would just be a triple threat tag match.
Okay. I don't want whiny FTR. Like, I don't want that coming out of all of this. So I like the idea. Somebody's got to ask why, and they got to flesh it out.
Yeah. Why?
That's like, you got, because again, if FTR, if they beat Starks and Bill, cool, they're the baby faces. I think they again basically are the baby faces at this point. They win.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, they win. Young Bucks come out. They get screwed over. That really baby faces FTR. And if they're just gonna Bret Hart whine and complain, which I assume they probably want to do anyway, it's like, nah, that's not fully for me.
The only downside to what we were just talking about is that they're in LA, and that is technically Bucks territory.
Yeah, they're gonna get cheered.
They're gonna get cheered. Yeah, regardless of what. You know what they'll do? They'll cheer. They'll do the whole thing. They'll cue it up, and then they'll have the streamers, but the streamers will still be Laker colors, and people will cheer even louder, and it'll be even more.
Be Clippers colors. If you do Clippers colors, then you might get. Yeah, whiny FTR would make them heel. Like, I don't think people want whiny FTR. Like, you gotta flesh out the heel babyface stuff. I know people might be mad at me of like the shades of gray type of thing. I think it works in some cases, and we talked about it on Wednesday. Drew and Seth, like, you know who's the babyface and who's the heel in this, but they're doing a very good job of presenting the two sides. AEW is just guys feuding with guys, and like, Moxley's the heel, but he's also the babyface against Orange Cassidy. Like, that, the Moxley dynamic works. The House of Black dynamic doesn't work for me, of like who they're going after type of thing. Like, certain guys can pull it off, other acts can't.
House of Black should be going after everybody. They should just hate everybody and be real black metal nonsense assholes.
Yeah, Clippers colors in the forms, that would make them heel. That's what I'm saying. Like,
that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make them. SoCal may be Lucha Bros territory, NorCal is Bucks, but it's still California as a whole for AEW fans, I would assume. And I feel like the Bucks would have a hard time getting booed. But like Jeremy said, you shoot out Clippers colors after the win in that arena, you'd probably get a good response.
Yeah.
You have James Harden come out and present the titles.
Great.
That's a big move right there.
They should go all James Harden. James Harden's not a system player. He's a system player.
I'm not a part of your system. I threw it on the ground. By the way, this popped me. Finally, my one true calling in life, making YouTube shorts, responding to In the Weeds. Please do. Fair. Go ahead, do it. Send it to all of us. Caden sent a super chat saying, said it all last week. TK is pushing away the hardcores. I don't think it's less. It's less that he's pushing them away. It's just the decisions being made are not in line with what AEW's original core values seemingly were, and nothing was ever said that this is what AEW. Like there was no charter of rights and freedoms when it
They
came.
had a mission statement.
Wasn't it just we're back? No, I'm just kidding. What was their mission statement?
I think Cody had it, so maybe once Cody, once Cody left, the mission changed, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
They did have a mission statement, though. I remember writing about this. Hold on.
You're gonna find it?
Yeah. AEW mission statements.
AEW was built to create moments of a lifetime.
No.
This is the AEW website.
Nah, we're not doing that.
Safe, inclusive, and respectful environment for all AEW events that is central to their mission.
Now it's a much longer.
I see it. Yeah, I got it here. I got it.
Like Tony Khan is
Sad Tony.
Yeah. They had a big old mission statement when they first launched and everything. So again, missions can change, plans change, pal. That's what it all is. I'm still mad that when they had their big Dynamite thing, when they had their big Dynamite, I think they promised me stats and analytics and everything. They did the rankings and then gave up on that. I was looking for how many super kicks the Bucks threw per match and stuff like that. I thought they were going to really lean into that stuff, and they didn't. That upset me.
Me too.
Personally.
Yeah, I get it. Hey, by the way, leave a thumbs up on the video if you haven't already, because you got to do that. Cody Will sent a super chat saying, looking forward to Turning Point and Crown Jewel, because we have a few minutes left in the show. We may as well pivot a little bit. I don't want to get into Turning Point because the show was already taped and airs tonight, and I know what happens. But you should join us on youtube.com/Fightful for the post show. Myself and Cresta Star will be live after Turning Point goes off the air. But Crown Jewel is this weekend. And what do you want to do? Just hear the matches and who's going to win?
I feel like a lot of these matches are kind of straightforward. LA Knight should win though and pop me.
Yeah.
Everybody else, yeah.
Okay, I'm into it. Okay, we can really just mess people up with that.
I don't think he will. I don't think anybody expects him to, but change it up a little bit. Just have LA Knight win. Cena and Solo, I'm interested in how they book that, because it feels like Solo should win. But it also feels like Cena will win. And then you could do the disappointed father, Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa type of thing.
Daddy.
So
Daddy.
that's honestly that's probably the most interesting match from a win-loss perspective that I have. Seth and Drew as well. I'm 50-50 on Priest cashing in, Seth winning and then Priest cashing in. I think that's a possibility.
Yeah, Cody and Damian opens the show, you said?
I think so. They got Sammy and whoever on the pre-show.
Oh, JD, yeah, that doesn't count though.
Yeah. I think Cody's gonna open the show.
Do you remember the very first Saudi show that they ever did, the Greatest Royal Rumble? Do you remember that they did the long ass kickoff show, and in the middle of that show they did the call to prayer? I don't know if you remember that, but it was a whole thing.
I think I watched that show on delay. So
I was watching it while I was at work, like doing my thing on one screen, and then so I just remember them talking about it as you watch like all these people just walking away from the arena, and the panel has to explain what's going on. It was very awkward. Anyway, there's nothing on this card that really jumps out at me as like as like a big shock. Io Sky and Bianca Belair. Do you change the title or do you have Io retain?
I mean, are we getting Kyrie here? Do we think?
I mean, reporting is she's back, baby. She's on the things.
Yeah, so we could get Kyrie here to confront the winner. I feel like Bianca gets this belt at some point because they're setting up Bianca and Charlotte for Mania. So it feels like Bianca gets it at some point. Does that match need a title? Probably not, because the whole story is Bianca wants to beat all the horsewomen. So that's the story. You don't really need a title for that. But they love putting Bianca and Charlotte in title matches, and I don't know if they know what to do with them if they ain't in title matches.
Also, you can make the case that Charlotte loves going after titles.
Yeah.
So if Charlotte's holding the thing that, if Bianca's holding the thing that Charlotte wants, and Bianca wants to beat up all the horsewomen, at least both sides kind of match up in terms
Yeah,
of
it makes sense. It makes sense. Like, I'm just saying, like, I don't know if you need it. Is the only thing, because you can still tell that same story, and of just like Charlotte just coming out and just being like, heard you want to beat all the horsemen women. Well, there's, title or not, I'm the biggest, best one to beat. Let's do this type of thing. Like, it doesn't need the title.
Card subject to change, brother.
I
Everyone's
gotta grab something, Joel. Riff for 2 seconds.
All right. Well, there's
4 seconds.
Sure, whatever. As long as it's not going to take too long. I'm looking forward to the show. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm going to watch it later because now that I have a kid who runs around all day, I can't watch wrestling live in the afternoons, even though wrestling in the afternoons is probably the best time to watch wrestling. Plenty of good stuff, though. Looking forward to Rampage. Looking forward to Collision. Yes, I know people are probably going to be like, oh, Joel doesn't actually like AEW. I do like AEW. I like watching wrestling. Looking forward to Impact. I think I might try to go to TNA Hard to Kill. I'm still on that. We're trying to crowdsource and crowdfund my possible trip to go to Vegas for TNA.
We're trying to get money out of these people, Joel. Knock it off.
Why? They're so good to us.
They are. We appreciate it.
I do appreciate it. But yes, get Scott D'Amore to send me to Vegas. I'll be there.
D'Amore's doing a bunch of interviews. Why wouldn't he come on our show?
Why? Like, I saw that and immediately I was like, what is this? Why can't I have him?
Yeah.
Is it because I call him my dad and post photos of us side by side all the
time? Probably
shouldn't
do that, Joel. Probably shouldn't.
I need Scott to see it so that we can talk about it on the air sometime.
Probably shouldn't do that.
Why not? It's gonna happen.
Crown Jewel.
There's not much else I got in terms of the Crown Jewel conversation. We can easily shift to literally everything else going on this weekend. Talk about what's going on in Collision this weekend. Right. There's an 8-man tag match. Darby Allin is taking on Lance Archer.
Sure.
Swerve and AR Fox have a match.
Ooh.
And so it's FTR and La Facción Ingobernables versus Ricky Starks, Big Bill, Gates of Agony. I'm guessing this is where we set up FTR versus Starks and Big Bill for the tag titles, unless the Bucks come out afterwards.
No, it's probably set up FTR Big Bill for the tag titles. But I do like that Ricky tweeted, like, hey, I didn't forget that the Young Bucks are owed a tag title shot.
Yep.
And it's like, yeah, well, everybody else did, Ricky.
Bucks certainly did. Lance Archer being on the card is shocking to me because it's not Battle of the Belts week.
Is it in Texas? Is the show in Texas? Is that why it's on the card?
It is. Is it? I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
They're probably in Kentucky. Although they're about to spend a lot of time in Texas, and it was very funny when they did the ticker underneath one of the shows, and I think it was Tony Schiavone was like, about to spend a lot of time in Texas. Really looking forward to spending a lot of time in Texas. They're in Wichita this week.
Okay. Yeah, usually they bring in Lance when they're in Texas.
That's true.
They needed someone, Darby, to get thrown around by. Lance is easy pickings there. So good on him. Good on Lance for getting a booking. I like Lance.
So they're doing Arlington, Texas for Rampage and Dynamite on the 13th, and then it's Final Battle from Garland, Texas, and then it's Collision the following night in Garland, Texas. Then they're in Oklahoma, but then they go back to San Antonio for Collision the following week. So they're just around the Oklahoma, Texas circuit for a while.
Sure,
why not?
All right.
What the hell just happened? Okay, I'm back. Something weird happened. My screen flashed.
Okay.
And the Acclaim's National 69-Day Celebration. Is this where House of Black lights on, lights off, and they go after?
No, they're in a match earlier, aren't they?
No, they're not listed at least as having a match unless I missed something.
Oh, then maybe. Yeah, sure. Just have them target the Acclaimed. We haven't seen that enough this year.
Looking forward to that. Is there anything else from this week?
SmackDown's taped. SmackDown is on Fox tonight, not Fox Sports 1. Okay, please check your programming.
Coors Light, not Bud Light.
That's right. So make sure you watch SmackDown if you want. I don't care if you watch it or not, honestly. It doesn't affect me either way.
We'll be not talking about it on Monday. It's main channel Monday, this coming Monday. My doctor's office is literally calling me right now, which, by the way, is the reason why I might not be on Monday's show, because I have my annual physical. It's very important to get checked up every single year, okay? So I might not be on the show. Or if I am, I'm going to be late. Jeremy knows. Really? Come on. we're gonna have some people on the show. How about
Rampage is tonight, Joel? Let everybody know about Rampage.
I thought that's Tony Khan's job to let me know about Rampage.
It's on TNT, I think, at 10 p.m. Eastern.
Good for you. Good for you, Tony Khan. Yeah. You've pulled back since your announcements about important announcements.
I wasn't a fan of your wrestling. Watch Rampage.
That's good stuff. I don't even want to touch the Tony announcement because we spent all week being like, it's level 2.
Man,
it's level 2. That's exactly what happened.
Man.
The second Nigel was on the screen, I'm like, oh, it's all in.
I will say this: people are being harsh on Tony by saying Tony called it huge or big. Nigel used those words on the show. That's not Tony's fault. Tony said it was important.
No, and then Tony tweeted out when the show went live that it was a huge announcement.
Oh,
well, he did do. Someone pointed that out to me, and I was like, "Oh, you made it worse."
Yeah, Tony's got to.
But up until that point, it was an important announcement, and we were just like, "Okay, it's level 2. It's not a big deal." And like, there was the Toys for Tots talk that you and I had, and they had already announced it, and maybe it was going to be more. And holiday when Tony started with Holiday Season is Among Us, I'm like, oh, they're going to do tickets. They want people to buy these tickets for Christmas, and here we are.
I thought it was hilarious when he's like, my family's Christmas tree's been up since July. He was like waiting for like the laughter. What's the presidential candidate who was like made the joke and then just waiting for like the laughter. It's like, okay, then it just like moves on. Like that's
most of them.
True. I felt for Tony. I was like, oh, he was so proud of that one, and there's just no one there to like, no live studio audience to pop for it.
Which is even funnier because like whenever you watch RJ's show, they've got like the 4 people behind the laughing. You'd expect someone to do that.
Yeah, Jed Bush. Yeah. He makes the whatever crack, and he's just like waiting. He's like, oh, okay. That wasn't Jed, but
it was Howard Dean, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, they did the important announcement. It was tickets. Like it is important. I understand why you would say that. You just don't do this stuff though. This is the please clap. Yeah, that was Jeb. Just don't do this. Like this is again where you need someone to ask like why. Why do we need to say this is some important announcement? We're just gonna get the fan base. We're gonna get them expecting something, and it's only gonna be disappointing. And I think Tony knows this because remember years ago when they did, we got an announcement. It's like tickets on sale for Florida. And it's like, hey, buddy, like this only affects Florida. We need to do something to make this up.
So I went back and this is how we did the levels, right? I went back and people were like, it's a major announcement. It's a huge, and I looked up the times when Tony's account actually used huge or major, whichever one it was. And that particular time was the last time that he used that specific wording when they did the Florida tickets. And the way that it was reacted to. And then it became hear from, important, very important, and then huge announcement. So there really are levels to it, and it's a very strange thing.
Just, the bigger announcement, and I'm not saying, it was better, but the bigger announcement was the Flair thing. And they did that through a press release and then a media blitz. But that was for wrestling fans, for the most part, that was the bigger announcement. The tickets thing, like it is important. I don't disagree that like it's important to know when the tickets get on sale, plan everything out. Like for wrestling fans, that is important stuff. Do you need to like make this a segment on Dynamite that you like hype and get fans like, oh, what is it going to be? Get fans speculating type of thing. Like, no, probably not. Like that's just where it's like, hey, we're going to have an important announcement tomorrow at 11 a.m. on social media. It's like, oh, okay, like probably not gonna be that big. And then you see its tickets, like, oh, okay, like yeah, that's fair enough, Tony. You don't need to dedicate TV time to it. That's something where it's like, do another women's match, add more time to the women's segments.
I'm thinking to myself, this is when you have your most captive audiences during Dynamite. So, like to a certain degree, it makes sense. I think it's more just about setting the expectation that it's not important or it's not huge. Like again, it's the expectation setting with fans, and you and I talk about this as well. And I don't want to get into the weeds on this too deep because it's Friday and we're almost done our show. But if this was specifically for the UK audience and they wanted to make it on Dynamite because Dynamite airs on free TV and it's like it was important for them to see it and so on and so forth. While I do agree that you put that on socials as well, you kind of have to take your biggest platform and use it as the platform to launch the ticket sales and then put it out on socials and put it out all over the place with that video package, that little video that Tony did with Nigel. So like I see the importance of it, but it really does come down to just picking out. Tony Khan is a very important announcement regarding All In 2024. That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
And people would have been like, cool, on sale day for tickets. That sounds good. And we would have probably just tempered our expectations. Pretty simple. Or maybe the idea was that they wanted to announce Flair and then they realized maybe someone asked why and there was pushback and they were like, maybe we shouldn't because people didn't like him the first time.
No, I think they announced what they wanted to announce in both segments, because the Flair thing, they tried to spin that as the energy drink deal. And that is something you're going to put in a press release type of thing and do it midday, mid-afternoon. So I think they did what they wanted to do in both instances. I don't think either were the right way to go. I mean, you're going to announce Flair how you're going to announce Flair. The important announcement thing, I think you could just you didn't have to do it like that, because this is the Dixie Carter thing all over again. It's like you start burning your hardcore fans, and your hardcore fans they're going to get sick of it by the end, and they're just going to tune out. And that's exactly what happened with Impact. It's like, oh, don't worry about it. Our hardcore fans, they're hardcore TNA, cross the line. It's like you get burned so many times, you just get tired of having third-degree burns. You're like, you know what? I'm just going to go chill over here, and I'm just not going to watch wrestling. Or WWE's actually, like, WWE's hot right now. So it's like, I might actually just watch more WWE or watch all this other 5 million hours of wrestling that's available to me.
Yeah, or we can just re-sign Bram.
You could re-sign Bram. That always works.
It usually works.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Ric Flair is stating that he has received clearance from his doctors and can take bumps. Yes,
he's gonna
in the
take
NWA. He can take bumps.
He's gonna bump. Like he's gonna do it by himself. Like no one's even gonna hit him. Who's Sting facing? Christian? Luchasaurus, a big dude. Luchasaurus is gonna walk up to Flair, and Flair's just gonna take a back bump, like right off of Luchasaurus, just like walking him down. It's gonna happen.
Quack doctors. Yeah, well, welcome to wrestling.
Nick Wayne, he's gonna make Nick Wayne look like a badass. Nick Wayne's just gonna come out. Nick Wayne's gonna go like that, and Flair's gonna boom, back bump.
This is the last thing I'm going to pull out, by the way, is the Frantic World thing. I wasn't upset about the announcement because now I can try to save up for All in London 2024. And again, that's why like this particular announcement did have weight and it did have importance, but it was more about setting expectation. Tony Khan is going to make an announcement regarding All in 2024. Would have gone further than trying to be like, I have a huge announcement. And then people start getting into their brains and over speculating. Like it didn't add to the overall rating or hype for Dynamite. Like, yeah, they did better this week than last week, but if they had done worse than they did last week ratings wise, then there would be a whole different conversation going on. So
they're in the 8 to 9 range. Like if they're in that range, that's largely what I expect from Dynamite at this point. If they fall below it, then the competition probably is not great. And if they rise above it, then hey, maybe they're heating up a little bit, but they're largely in the 8 to 9 range right now.
Yeah. Anyway, speaking of which, we're 8 to 9 minutes over the show. So what, unless you have something to add?
Joel?
Yeah, that's me.
Gonna drink a G Fuel. That's a G Fuel because Woo Energy doesn't pay me nothing. Let's see what this blue ice tastes like.
I was gonna have the blueberry muffins one, but
blueberry muffin.
Yeah. My stomach. So Wednesday, let me pull the curtain back as you drink this. I took the kid to daycare on Wednesday. Normally my wife would do that. Okay. And I went and got a sandwich from the local supermarket. And it was one of those like gotta go today ones. It was an egg sandwich. Turned me inside out.
Yeah, egg sandwich is
and it didn't look bad, it didn't taste bad. Just I realized after everything, I was just like, nope. Yeah, so it's been rough for my stomach for the last couple of days. So I'm not gonna get G Fuel till I'm feeling better.
I say the blue ice. There you go, blue ice, everybody. Blue ice, not too bad. I can taste the blue. I can taste the ice. You know, that's woo. This is a good energy drink.
Feel like you shouldn't say the woo parts.
Why? Am I going to get copyrighted?
No, not at all. It's more just
Oh.
because it's not his energy drink.
Yeah, I guess not. Did you see the American Nightmare Apple Lemonade flavor that I pitched?
Oh yes, I thought that was an actual thing for a minute. Yes, actually, I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
Let's do that.
Cody. C4 American Nightmare Apple Lemonade. Get ready, everybody. It's coming.
The
soon.
WrestleMania main event, he comes out in C4 Apple gear.
It's American Nightmare Apple Lemonade. You gotta make it.
Why
correct.
apple lemonade?
American Nightmare Apple Lemonade.
I hate you so much.
I'm so proud of that when I came up with it.
Oh my god.
So proud of it.
Chat's asking me and Kate on Sunday. I think so. It comes. There's no show on Sunday, so I don't see why not. Oh god, I'm so upset about not getting that.
I was so see. My tweet should have gotten over bigger once people like understood what I was going for.
But the problem is, Jeremy, if you get too smart, they just don't get it.
I'm too advanced for all of these the pores, as MJF
layers to this game.
There is layers to this game. There really is. There is layers to this game. Yeah.
Plug it. Let's get out of here.
Joel, we've seen our share of ups and downs. Oh, how quickly life can turn around.
Oh, God.
In an instant, it feels so good to reunite. Within yourself, within your mind, let's find peace there.
Stop it.
When you are with me, I'm free. I'm careless, I believe. Above all the others, we'll fly.
Yes.
It brings tears to my eyes. My sacrifice. Ba-na-na-no, da-na-na-no, da-na-na-no, da-no. I just want to say hello again. Da-na-na-na, 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 ba-no, da-na-na-na, da-na-na-na, da-na. I just want to say hello again. Ba-na-na-no, ba-na-na-no, ba-no, ba-na-na-no, ba-na-na-no. 'Cause when you are with me,
should have stopped.
I'm free. I'm careless, I believe. Above all the others, we'll fly. This brings tears to my eyes. My sacrifice. Ba-na-na-no, da-na-na-no, da-no.
Don't follow him on
My sacrifice.
Creston and I will be live tonight after the tournament.
Ba-na-na-no, da-na-na-no, ba-no-boom.
YouTube.com/Fightful. I am at Joel Pearl, JOELPEARL.
I just want to say hello again.
We love you too, Kai. Thank you for the super chat. My lighter is not available to me right now because
I just want to say hello again. Ba-na-na-no, da-na-na-no, ba-na, ba-na-na-no, ba-na-na-no. My sacrifice.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends beyond the binary, we'll see you on Monday. I might not even make it. Cheers.